day 2 of our 2023 Goldsboro retreat. Before we get started, we're going to call the roll, and then I'm going to make a couple of announcements. So, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Ham.
Here.
Mayor
Present.
Councilman
Present.
Councilman Gaylor.
Present.
Councilman Bass.
Okay, we're here. We are missing Councilwoman Matthews, but we have a quorum. So on the agenda, I want to make a couple of changes to the agenda. We made some moves yesterday, so today we're going to put the public utilities rate and system development fees, which was scheduled yesterday at 10:40, move it down to 11 o'clock, where we took something out yesterday.
Mayor, if I could clarify that we did cover those subjects yesterday, but there was also a capital improvement plan discussion from the Public Utility Director that did not occur. That's what will be occurring at 11 o'clock today.
Okay. And that's 11:30 actually, right?
No, at 11 and then 11:30, I'd like to do the strategic
Then
plan.
we'll do the water and wastewater asset inventory at 11. And I believe that's all I have. Do you have?
So at 11, sir, I'd like to do the capital improvement plan for public utilities that the Public Utility Director did not get a chance to do yesterday.
Okay, all right.
And then at 11:30, I'd like Octavius to be able to finish up his strategic plan discussion with council.
Okay, okay.
Mayor Ham,
Sure.
I move we modify the agenda as the order of business of the day as discussed by you and the manager to move the capital improvement plan to 11 o'clock today and the strategic plan discussion to 11:30 today. Second.
Motion made, second, in discussion. All in favor, signify your rates by raising your hand. And I believe that will include Councilman Broadway over there too. You raised your hand, okay, good. Okay, motion is made, carried. One other item too that I'll go ahead and cover this right now so I don't forget it. We talked about yesterday scheduling a date for a public hearing on the voting process. Yes, public forum, yeah, public forum. And the clerk, our clerk polled our council members, and it seems like the 14th of March is a good day to hold that. It'll be held here at this location at 6 p.m. 6 p.m. on the 14th of March. Since everybody was polled, I'm just going to ask if anybody has any objections to that, signify by now, let me know. So we'll plan on having it on the 14th of March, 6 o'clock here at the Event Center. I think that's all I have on the agenda. So we'll just go right on into the presentations, starting with our fire department.
I think police department was up
I mean,
first.
excuse me, our public works.
We've got police department up
Oh,
first,
yeah,
is that
okay.
correct?
I'm reading the wrong line, I'm sorry.
Chief West, welcome again.
Good morning, Mayor, Manager, and council members.
Good morning.
Budget priorities for us this year. It's similar to what it was last year, salaries for recruiting and retention and also vehicles. First slide will show kind of what our current status is with our personnel. Police officers, which would be grade 73, we're budgeted at 61. I've got 23 vacancies in there. So we've got 38 that are actually filled, and out of those 23 vacancies, 20 are frozen. Grade 76, police corporal, which is the next grade up. Budgeted for 23. There's currently 5 vacancies there. That gives us a total of actually 18. Police sergeant, budgeted for 11. I've got 1 vacancy and a patrol sergeant. 10 actual positions filled. Police captains, budgeted for 8, fully staffed now. Anticipate a vacancy by the end of the year there. Police major got 1 vacancy currently out of 3, and the chief's position at 1. So that gives us an overall staffing as budgeted as 107 with currently 30 vacancies, with 77 actual positions that are filled.
Chief, could you clarify on the frozen? That's not part of the 23, right? That's in addition to?
No, that is part of the 30. So with the positions right now that I've got 20 are frozen, so 23 vacant. That means I've got 3 that I can currently fill
Okay.
for officer. So when we roll into our corporal's promotion, if I promote those 5, that'll open up 5 more positions. So it's kind of a trickle down, but yeah, that is 20 is included in the 20 frozen are included in the 23 vacancies. Types of separation that we've had, if you want to go back 4 years or 5 years, I can, but we'll just concentrate on 2020. Last year, we had a total of 11 retirements. We lost 7 officers to other agencies with more competitive pay or just incentives, just a better fit for those officers. 1 left just to get out of law enforcement altogether and pursue their education. 1 was terminated. And then 2 others left for undisclosed reasons, which could have been, they just, on the exit interview, they didn't indicate to me in a letter of where they were going. So for 2020 alone, we lost 14 officers. You can see from 2021 on back, 18 and 21, 17 and 2020. So really over the last 5 years, I've gone through 66 officers, whether it be through retirement, terminations, moving on to other law enforcement agencies or getting out of the profession. So it's really picked up over the last, since COVID, it's really picked up that we've lost a lot. Kind of what we think, or at least what I think we need to do to help us with recruiting and retention is longevity. Longevity, the city did it several years ago. They've got away from it. Longevity keeps, I feel like, is going to help us with retaining our employees on the 5-year and up. We do a lot for hiring incentives. A lot of things for officers between 1 and 7 years, and I'll go into that a little bit later. But once officers get past the 5th and the 7th year, unless they promote into a higher position, the incentives aren't there. They've run out of incentives. And that's where we run the risk of losing veteran, vetted, and great employees at that point. Our current incentive packages that we do have at hiring, at time of hiring, or they can accumulate these during their careers. Education, they get a 2.5% for associates and a 5% for a bachelor. Prior experience, if they come to me from another law enforcement agency, or even if they get out of the military and some form of security forces or something kind of police related in the military, the incentives that we give is roughly about a 1% increase in salary per years of experience. Come to me from another agency with 10 years experience, comparable to us, you'll get a 10% bump above starting pay when you do start. If you're with us, if you attain your degrees as you're employed with us at the time that you get it, you'll get the 2.5% to 5% at that point. Probation, this is the state's probation. Once you're a new officer and you come to me out of BLET, you're on probation with the state for 1 year. Once you come off of that probation with the state, then you'll get a 5% bump in pay there. If you're with the department and you become a field training officer or FTO or K-9 or a traffic officer or you're bilingual, you'll get 5% increase there. And then again, the career progression. Right now at 2 years, we provide you a list of what training you need to accomplish within that 2 years that we provide. And then at the 2-year mark, you get a 5% bump. At the 4-year mark, that's police officer 2, you get another 5% increase. And at the 7 years, that's senior officer, that's another 5% increase. If you promote prior to that 7 years, then this career incentive goes away. You're not eligible for those. So you'll lose a little at that end. Another incentive, obviously, is the take-home cars. That was a big move for us a few years ago. Take-home cars right now is if an officer that's hired with us lives within 18 miles of the police department or 18.3 miles, they're eligible to receive a take-home car. So that's some of the incentives that we offer up to our officers. It's a good package, I feel like. It's somewhat competitive. So I think it helps us get officers in the door. My main concern right now is once they're here, we need to do something for them to keep them. And again, salary comparison, this is kind of where we stack up with some other agencies around us, everywhere from the Wayne County Sheriff's Office, Wilson, Princeton, Kinston, Garner, Clayton, Smithfield, Raleigh, and Chapel Hill. Ours is $40,400. We're a little bit behind the county, and then just a little bit ahead of Kinston. But other than that, we're $4,000 or $5,000 salary-wise behind other agencies that are comparable to our size, workflow, calls for service. So we're a little bit behind there. Again, Wilson and these other agencies, they do offer incentives similar to ours, whether it's for degrees, language. They're similar. Some of what these agencies will do to get their salary up is they figure that into their starting salary. So where when some officer goes in there and it says, hey, you're eligible to start at $45,000 if you meet these requirements, whereas we tell you this is what your start's going to be at the salary. That's your starting salary, and then we put salaries on the other end. So, but that's kind of where we stack up with agencies that are similar to us.
Chief,
Yes.
before you advance that slide, for there only be a difference of less than $1,000 between us and the county, what do you think is really the underlying factor of our officers leaving?
Leaving us for the county or
For the
just leaving
county.
in general?
For the county.
I think it's a
For those
different
positions.
atmosphere over there. It's a different, if you're in the county patrolling, officers that patrol the county, if they live, obviously they live in the county. If they want to go home for lunch with their family, they can. They have more accessibility. I think another thing that kind of lures them over there is I don't think the county has a call volume that we have. We do 50-some-odd thousand calls for service a year. I don't know what the calls for service is to the county, but what I'm hearing is that they don't have the volume of work that we have. So I think that's, if somebody can go make a little bit more money than what they're making now and not have as much time, as much work to do,
Yes,
I
sir.
think that's obviously something somebody looks at. And then I think also where I think they're better at it is there's a lot more time they can do training and other stuff because they don't have the volume, the workload, their staffing numbers and stuff like that. So I think it helps them. We're just, the size of our agency and the way we patrol and the area that we patrol is our call volume is. You're going to learn to be a police officer pretty quick with Goldsboro PD as opposed to some of these other agencies that may only have 1 or 2 calls for service a night.
And that's why I think that the longevity is imperative, because like I said, you guys are constantly training and paying for this training, and guys are made more marketable to transfer somewhere else, but they're leaving as soon as they cross that mark. And I think, say, from a retention standpoint, especially in jobs in public safety, with all the training you have to have, as soon as you get it and you pay out a budget to train these guys and then they go jump ship, I think that's the best way to, as far as retention, I mean, it's the only sensible way, so.
Yeah, I agree. The county does well. They do very well with that, and it's almost a trade-off for us. When I do interviews for new hires, I think a lot of the applicants you get there, it's a gamble on our part because I'm looking at somebody that wants to come to us, and my sales pitch to them is, look, if you want to become a state agency, a federal agency, or you want to go somewhere else other than Goldsboro, give me the opportunity, or give the city the opportunity to bring you on 3 to 4 years, let us train you to be the best that you can be, and then the downside to that is now they become extremely marketable to other agencies.
Gone.
But that's what we've got to do. That's the discussion we've got to have early on. So like you said, retention I think is very important. It's up to us to try to make them want to stay.
Yes, sir.
So yeah,
Thank
I
you.
agree. Vehicle inventory. Again, this is everything that we talk about in just about every budget. I think we're at point critical as far as I know is with our current fleet. This is just a roughly, I don't know that it matters to you, the years of, the vehicle years, what the model year is. It just gives you total patrol vehicles. Patrol vehicles are the ones that are marked up with the graphics on them, the light bar, and they're routinely used for everyday patrol by these officers. I've got 51 of those currently in the fleet. The average age of those, a little over 6 years. The admin vehicle are the unmarked. It's the vehicles like mine, the one the investigator drives, and then some specialized units that we have that require them to have unmarked cars as opposed to patrol marked up units, but we just call them administrative cars. I've got 43 of those in the fleet. The average years of those are 11 years, a little over 11 years. And you can kind of see 2016 was a pretty good year for us vehicle-wise, and then we've kind of tapered off. And a lot of it for us right now is not only just budget constraints, but also supply chain issues. It's very difficult to get fleet vehicles right now. It's very competitive. What you can get, you got to face it. Everybody in the state of North Carolina is looking for the same thing. So, and sometimes we just, our orders aren't substantial enough, and then manufacturers have to make some cuts, and sometimes we're ended up on the cutting end. The plan that we were trying to get into back in 2021, we call it a 10 and 2, or at least I call it a 10 and 2, 10 patrol cars and 2 administrative cars. We found that when we went over to take-home cars, our vehicles are lasting longer. Those vehicles are only getting about 12,000 miles on them per year. When they were a line car that was shared by every officer, the car was constantly on the road, those cars would rack up the miles, and they were only giving us about 3 to 4 years mileage-wise and model-wise, but unfortunately we would hang on to them much longer. So the 10 and 2 rule is kind of what we follow. Again, it allows us to keep the vehicles fresh and rotate them through. If we do a 10 and 2, roughly these take-home cars now are lasting about 8 years. So with a 10 and 2, 8 years, we will have replaced the fleet, and then we cycle back around and we start all over again. So it just keeps newer cars on the road that look better, gives a better morale aid to the officers. More vehicles are under warranty, so maintenance is a little bit less as far as that. And again, it just allows us to keep the officers in newer and safer vehicles as opposed to driving these ones that have got high mileage and aren't quite as safe and quite frankly are hard to get parts for right now. Again, just a summary of the fleet. 32 vehicles currently have over 80,000 miles on them. 16 have 80 to 100. 29 have 100 to 120. And then 17 vehicles have over 120 miles on them. Again, this slide needs to be updated just in this net. The service life of a take-home car is approximately 6 to 8 years, but right now we feel like 8 years is pretty much where we're at on that. And again, the decision to deadline a car is based on the model year, the mileage, and the parts availability, and the overall maintenance of the cars. And the take-home cars are averaging over 12,000 miles per year. Again, another summary, and this is kind of, we'll roll into where our new hires are. For fiscal year 20, we purchased 7 patrol cars and 2 admins as opposed to the 10 and 2. Fiscal year 21, we didn't purchase any patrol cars, but did do 2 admins. Fiscal year 22, we purchased 2 patrol cars and 2 admins. And then in our current budget, we did 3 admin vehicles, but the way we've done our vehicles, our admin vehicles, if it replaces an admin vehicle we currently have, that vehicle will float into a patrol, be marked up, and we can use it. So with the 3 we got there, we had an opportunity to get 2 SUVs. The Tahoes, where I think is where we're going to end up eventually, because these vehicles are packed tight, full of equipment that these officers are required to carry. So we went ahead and jumped on the Tahoes, and they will go to an administrative role, and then the Chargers that the administrators have now that have low miles on them will be pushed over to patrol to work with those units. Currently, with the 29 vacancies that I do have, although 20 of them are frozen, that's 9 that I can fill. I've got 1 patrol car available for a new hire officer. I don't have vehicles to cover my vacancies. And what that'll force me to do at that point is that for every officer that I hire, and once they make it out of training in their FTO phase, I won't be able to assign them a take-home. I'll have to take a take-home from another officer that's been here and then have them share that vehicle. And now my morale is going in the other direction. I'm losing it again. So it's very difficult. I understand it's a balancing act. The officers take pride in these vehicles. We try the best to take care of them, but sometimes we're victims of circumstances. We've lost 2 vehicles probably in the last 6 months to motor vehicle crashes that weren't our fault, and then unfortunately in some cases it's an uninsured motorist that hit us, so now we've got to replace a vehicle at our expense and the insurance doesn't cover it. So that's just kind of where we're at as far as our priorities, at least I feel like, for our budget. I think where we can make up some of the other stuff as far as equipment that we need, technology, speed trailers, stuff like that, we can kind of overcome that with grants, be more aggressive in pursuing grants to help us with the equipment end of it. But right now, I just think that for us, to help us with the recruitment and the retention is going to be longevity. Salaries, I think our starting salary is somewhat competitive. If we go down the road like we did last year and do salary increases for the start, to not create any more compression for the agency, it would be like we did last year, 5% across the board or 4% or whatever. It's for the whole agency, not just the starting pay. So if we do just the starting pay, you're going to have to, I feel like, do it for everyone. And that's kind of mine in a nutshell. Any questions?
I've got a couple if you'll allow.
Absolutely.
So, as we're at decreased numbers, what technology aids can you use to ease that load? Are there traffic cameras? Are there other things that you would advise us to consider?
Traffic cameras, that's going to be a DOT issue. I don't know how much DOT likes to dabble in their cameras being used for law enforcement purposes. I don't think it's smiled upon. We can do other technology things like the tsunami cameras that we've got. I think we've got 6 currently. We can go more. Where we struggle with the tsunami cameras is placement. They're made to be moved relatively quick. We can probably take one down. I think IT can help me with this answer. Probably in 30, 45 minutes we can move it. The problem is being able to relocate it. Duke Energy, understandably, is they don't want a lot of things on their power pole, so we've got to so that delays us in being able to move it. Other technology, ShotSpotter, I'm very happy with ShotSpotter where we're currently at. We like to be able to tap in a little bit more to more city cameras, which we do to utilize that. Technology is going to help us, but I've got to have the officers to kind of man that technology and work through it. So.
And my second question about your vehicle fleet. What are your reps telling you about the next generation vehicles? I mean, I'm following what Dodge is putting out projecting for the next generation Durango. I'm following what Ford is saying about the next generation Explorer. What are you seeing 3 years down the road and needs of infrastructure to support whatever the next generation vehicles are?
Yeah, a lot of them are going electric, pushing out. That's what Dodge was getting out of the Charger business and the Challenger to go to the Dakota or the Durango. I get confused on those, but yeah, a lot of them are going to EV, going to electric vehicles. There are agencies, police agencies that are doing pilot programs with electric vehicles, and I don't know how successful that is, but yeah, infrastructure would be critical at that point to be able to sustain that. Chevrolet, not so much. I think Chevrolet's more along the lines of their police package is going to roll more into the SUV market, probably around the Tahoe. Unfortunately, where the Tahoe is, the Tahoe to me is a proven platform. It's got a good history with it. Unfortunately, the cost is where the problem is. So I think Tahoe's going to probably come in around 48,000, whereas I could probably pick up a Charger last year for about 27. So it's very competitive at this point. But I think going down the road, EVs and stuff like that is probably where we need to be looking.
Chief, there's a bill in the General Assembly. I don't have the bill number in front of me, but we've talked about it, us mayors and so forth. And you and I have spoken a little bit about it, of utilizing civilians for wreck investigations. It's my understanding that currently the bill is not going to allow those civilians to issue tickets. What's your understanding of the situation this time, and what do you see that bill having to do with Goldsboro Police Department?
Yeah, I know I had an attorney reach out to me that's kind of the association, North Carolina Association for Chiefs of the Police representative reached out to me, just wanted to know my thoughts on it. I support it, and he just wanted to see how much support throughout North Carolina that the agencies were going to give to where he could push the issue through Raleigh, and I think we've got a very good support. I do support it. Whether it's going to get to the point where it'll allow them to issue a uniform citation or a ticket, I don't know that it's going to quite get there. The way it's set up right now for the civilians to do it, they would do a crash investigation that only involved property damage. So if a civilian responds, they investigate it, but once somebody on the scene claims injury, then I have to send a sworn officer over there. So I do think it would be a benefit to us to allow for that to pass, so I can do, and that'll help augment what we're trying to do with the civilian, the volunteer, reserve status, so that definitely would help. Another thing that we can do with more civilians, kind of on the aside from that, is what they call the virtual response team, to where civilians can man the phones at the PD, and if you've got somebody that's going to call in a B&E to their property, or over the weekend their vehicle was broken into Monday morning, they just want to report it, we can do that more using civilians over the phone. That would help offset the sworn vacancies that I have. So it's definitely something that we're working towards, but as far as civilian investigators, I do support that, and hopefully it'll move forward, and that'll help us.
I think some of our cities, Greenville being one, and there's a couple others that are already using civilian crash investigators. But it's my understanding that the bill will not allow, currently in the House, will not allow for issuing of traffic citations.
Correct. Yep. And they've been successful. Greenville's been successful with it. I think Wilmington does it as well. Spoken to those chiefs, and they've done very well with it. So I think it's something that's going to be here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just want to make one comment. I think the chief's presentation was excellent, and I think the reality is that we're having a shortage of police officers everywhere throughout the United States, and that's only gotten worse over the past 20 years. We could do a pay and classification study, which is something we do need to do. But in the case of police, I don't know that if, for example, Raleigh, they're paying $50,000 as their entry level. If we adjusted that, I think we'd still have a shortage, and I think the issue is deeper than that. In a normal environment, we could do that and fix the problem, I think. But we're not in a normal environment, and it's particularly acute in the police department where it's another situation that's going on there. That's just my opinion, but I know that adjusting pay, when I was in Rollsville, we fixed that problem. But right now, they're having that problem still, and so is Raleigh. They could pay the most amount. It's a problem of getting people in the field right now. But, your presentation was spot on, Chief. Thank you.
And I think you'll see it, not to steal Octavia's thunder, but I think you'll see it when Octavius comes up here and talks about the crime rate and the clearance rates. I think you'll see those numbers will be quite surprising, to be frank with you, that our vacancies are starting to show up in that area, what I think is going to affect in the long run, so we'll see it there later.
To your point, Matt, every city of any size in North Carolina, nationwide probably, but specifically in North Carolina, has the same problem with police numbers that we have. So we are not alone, and I agree with you. Money alone is not the issue, or cars or whatever.
Right.
It's the current situation that we're living in.
I agree.
I talked to these new police officers that we are sworn in, or being sworn in, and, you know, I'm always appreciative of the fact that they chose to enter this career here in Goldsboro. But I always say that, you know, they're alone to some degree in choosing that career. It takes a person of dedication and wanting to serve to put on that uniform.
Thank you.
I'd like to add, thanks for the service of your GPD chief, as well as the fire department. You know, public safety is a key issue, as everybody's been mentioning here, and you certainly have a lot of support from the leadership of the city council and management. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thanks.
Chief, my fire department.
Good morning, everybody, mayor, council.
Morning.
Amen.
Morning.
I want to start off by telling you thank you. Mike's a little taller than I am. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and talk to you. I'm going to try to be brief because I know our time is short, but I'm going to give you a little bit of data where we've been and then talk a little bit about where we want to go for fiscal year 24. So our response data for calendar year 22, we ran over 2,900 calls, which was an increase of 6%. You can see a few spots where we did reduce in call volume. One specifically, EMS, was a reduction. That was more so because dispatch switched to an emergency medical dispatch, and we had some confusion on what services we provided. So we think we've got that figured out, and we're going to work forward. The biggest increase was in the other category, and that's basically any type of fire that doesn't involve structure, our water rescues, things of that nature. So we did have a large increase there. Community outreach, that's a big thing for us at the fire department. We try our best to be out every day to interact with the community and let them know that we're here for them. Different things, fire prevention, car safety seats. We're at Jingle in the Park, Freedom Fest, Downtown Lights Up. If you got down to our end of the street, you saw the light display that our personnel did, and that was all their own stuff they brought. So we try our best to get out in the public, and through that, we've reached over 7,000 individuals. I think that count is low because your large-scale events, it's tough to keep up with those numbers. So just to give you that information, moving forward into our budget goals, I've got four up here. The last one is just for your information. I want to prepare for the future, and I want you to know trends that we're seeing at the fire department and what you may need to look at down in the future. So the first point is recruit and retain. I think you're going to hear that overwhelmingly from all the staff. We currently have 7 full-time vacancies. Those full-time vacancies are entry-level firefighters. We also have 2 part-time positions. 3 of my full-time positions and my 2 part-time positions are frozen. And I'd love to open those back up to get us back to full staffing. The retention steps that you as a council have approved and we've requested through the years under Chief Dixon and myself, we feel like it's a little early to tell, but we feel like it's working. Since those have been implemented, I've only lost 1 firefighter to another department. And he was a younger man that wanted to go to a metropolitan department, bigger department, more calls. So we've only lost 1 since we've implemented that. So we think we're on the right track. I don't think that we're done, but I think we're on the right track. The way to move forward and help with retention, I'm going to echo what Chief West said. I don't think just jumping up that starting salary is the answer. because you exaggerate compression that's already existent. Cost of living like we did this fiscal year, I think is our help, because then you're reaching all the way across and moving forward. Now, when I talk about fully staffed, I know the question always comes up, why do you need so many people? Why do we need so many trucks? Well, we utilize NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, and the Insurance Service Organization. We utilize those standards and guides to direct us. We take what their guidance is and combine it with what we have in the city to work with. And that's where we get our standard model. To give you an idea, NFPA 1710 says to safely, effectively, and efficiently mitigate a structure fire at a single-family dwelling, you need 17 firefighters on scene. Now, to do that, if we're fully staffed, I can respond 3 engines, a tower, and a battalion chief. That gives me 17 people. What that also allows is to have 2 more trucks in the city to respond to anything else that happens. So there's 7 or 8 people still waiting there. So we like to keep those numbers up. As we stand now with our staffing, I have to send 4 engines, the tower. So that leaves 1 engine in the city for the rest of it with 3 people. Now, we do have mutual aid agreements, but volunteer departments are like anywhere else, they're hurting for personnel. So it is something we're constantly looking at. The next thing we talk about is training opportunities. Obviously, everybody knows training is very important, and it is to us as well. One of the benefits of sending our personnel to advanced training is they broaden their knowledge. They get to go to professionals in our career field that have a different perspective from outside. And what that does is allows them to bring it back to us, and we can implement new and different ideas so we don't stay the same. This broadening of knowledge allows us to have our succession plan in place for future leaders of the department. One of the other things I want to touch on this is improving of our training grounds. So if you've ever been to our training facility, you know that we work really hard on it. It's excellent. It's not just the fire department uses it. Law enforcement uses it. Other departments come out and use it. So we're also a model. Other departments that want to build a training facility, come look at what we have. So we want to keep up to date with it. And one of the improvements we want to do is pave part of the training facility. Now that cost on last year's dollar was about $65,000 for a small part of it. We're still waiting on prices to come back. It's multifaceted in what it does. One, it helps with the wear and tear on vehicles. If you've ever been down there and you've seen the rocks and what we've got on there, so it helps. It also helps to mitigate any potential injuries due to uneven pavement. And the last benefit that we have is it allows us to run our CPAT, our candidate physical ability test. Currently, we have to run it at headquarters fire station. If we can pave that area and get a level ground, we'll be able to run it down there and stop having to do it up at headquarters fire station. This is the fun one that you guys hear me talk about every year. And I first want to thank you for the fire truck that you allowed us to get in this fiscal year. I think it is a huge help and a step in the right direction, so I thank you for that. But if you remember last year, I said we really needed 2. So I told you I would come back, and here I am. The unfortunate thing is, in the past 3 years, the fire truck price has gone around 45% increase. So a fire truck now for an engine, and this isn't all the bells and whistles, this is a working fire truck, is going to cost us about $800,000, where last year it may have been $700,000 or $650,000. So I just want to let you know that that's there. The advantage, if there is one, is the build time on a fire truck is about 600 days right now. So we're looking at 2 years out before we could even get it. We utilize NFPA 1910. I know you've heard me say it before, but 15 years frontline, 10 years in reserve status. Our average fleet age now is between 16 and 17 years old. And I have a graph to kind of give you an idea of where we are now. That is our fleet. Now, I told you I showed you we have 9 apparatus. You'll see 10 spots up here. That's because the new engine 2 is not here yet, so I'm still showing the old one. And you can see, having 9 apparatus, having to replace them like we do, we need to be purchasing one every 3 or 4 years. So you can see the nice stacked up we have. However, you see on the end engine 7, that's 32 years old. It is currently out of service, has been for over 6 months, because we can't get the parts for the motor. They can't even find the fuel injectors, so we're having to have them rebuilt. So it's taken us time. If we move to, and you allow me to purchase another fire truck, it won't be here till 2025. This is what our fleet will look like at that time. Now you can see we're still out of bounds of what NFPA would like us to be. Engine 8 would be 27 years old. So we don't feel that's a problem. With a newer fleet comes less downtime, so we won't be as reliant on it. The other thing you'll notice is engine 3 and 4 in the middle there are right at that 15-year mark. We feel like that these trucks will be able to last another 3 years. Engine 4, as you know, we just had to put a new motor in. It's had extensive transmission work done to it. Engine 3 had a new motor in, I believe, around 10 years ago. So we think these trucks will be able to extend their longevity by 3 years to make up the difference. This is just letting you know what our maintenance costs have been over the past 3 years. From 20 to 21, we had a 39% increase. From 21 to 22, we had a 63% increase. Now, I do want to point out in 22, that includes the motor on engine 4, which was $50,000. If you take that away from it, we still had a 15% increase in maintenance costs. So you can see the older our fleet goes, the more our costs go up in maintenance. And we broke it down by truck to kind of give you an idea of what we're spending for each truck. And you can see, if you average it out, you take away the $50,000, you're about $12,000 to $13,000 a year is what we're paying. So newer trucks obviously brings that cost down. And we would hope it would be less than what you see on the far left, engine 1, the $9,000. New trucks and what we're purchasing now have 2-year warranties on them. So we're getting bumper to bumper 2 years, and that helps with our maintenance costs moving forward. Life cycling of facilities. This just, the graph on the left gives you the age of what our fire stations are. And if you look at last year or this year's budget, you see that I requested to rebuild Station 3. This year, I've stepped back from that, and I feel like we need to do a needs assessment or feasibility study to look at that, to see what needs to be done with it or what can be done with it. NFPA did research in 2019 and found that older stations have issues that can't be solved with maintenance or repair. Facilities over 40 years old show a common problem of mold remediation. Then you start getting into other issues such as older stations were not designed to have male-female facilities, and that station is one. Councilman Polak was out there with me, so he knows. It's open bay sleeping. There's one bathroom with one shower. So having the ability to have a female is not an option out there. And then the most important one that you've heard me talk about before is safety. That station is a back-end station at an extremely busy intersection. So I had my officers start to record what we call near-miss close call incidents. They recorded 18 times in calendar year 2022 that someone came in around the corner and almost hit the truck or our personnel. Putting a light out there, I don't think is going to be an issue because you're looking at a flashing light. With them widening the road, traffic is increasing. So it's very concerning to us that we need to start looking at something that we can do with that station.
And Chief,
Yes, sir.
before you advance, I know you said, of course it was somewhat like that when I was there, but when you only have 3 men on the truck and you're backing into that station, depending on what side the firefighter's sitting on, like you said, I mean, you can get, and it's happened to me several times. When you're backing that truck in, if the car is in a rush, I mean, it's definitely a safety hazard.
Yes,
especially with 4 men, you can kind of have somebody block each side of the traffic, but with one man backing up a truck, and you have to have that backer. I mean, it's not an option to
Yes, sir.
have the engineer just back up. So that's definitely always been a concern of mine with that.
Yes, sir, thank you. And you gotta remember, when they stop and go to back in, they're turning on their lights. So it's not like people should be surprised, but everybody's in a hurry going through there. So, with lights, no one's still paying attention. So we need to do something to make sure we protect them. And the real answer is a drive-through bay, which again goes into the needs assessment, feasibility. What do we need to do as far as that station? Now with that, I'm gonna move into the future. This is for the information of the core council. James Boyette at IT helped me create this map, and I know it kind of looks like a jumbled mess. But what it is that is the city of Goldsboro, including Seymour Johnson. According to ISO, a fire truck, to meet its response requirements, should have 1.5 road miles in all directions. So that's what you see up there. Those are our existing stations. If you look between what looks like green and purple, that is still in the city, and that is still uncovered by that 1.5 road miles. Now, we're not concerned about it because it's been this way for years. We feel comfortable with still meeting the requirements. I'm losing my voice. So we're okay with that right now. However, the more that we annex and the more that we add to the eastern part, that will become something that council will need to look at in the future. The other bigger part where I see a trend is going west towards Rosewood. Forgive the yellow blob, that was my highlighting attempt because I didn't get that. That is area that is either annexed or projected to be annexed into the city. The fire department is still responsible for coverage. We have automatic aid with Rosewood, but again, volunteer departments are hurting for personnel as well. So we're still held to our normal standards of reaching this area. So as we grow that way, which growth is a great thing, I'm not saying we don't need to. In the future, we need to start looking at what are we going to do there. The last slide I have is just another variation, and that is ISO allows for 2.5 road miles as opposed to 1.5 for aerial devices. So our tower is assigned downtown because we feel that's where the biggest life hazard is for higher buildings. And you can see the area that covers. Now, if you look north and east, it's uncovered, but it's been this way for years. Again, as we annex and we move further and we increase residents, it is something that we may need to start looking at as far as, do we need to put another aerial device out there to make sure we have the coverage for the city? And that's all I have. Sorry for my voice going away. But if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer what I can.
Chief, I just want to make a point on when you refer to the mutual aid that we have with the volunteer departments. I think, to put it in layman's terms, a lot of people just think these guys are sitting at the station. No, these guys have regular jobs that they work, and during business hours of the daytime, which we run a lot of calls, I mean, we're waiting on them to get to the station. You know, hopefully they can get off from their job. A lot of people don't know that. So the response time is going to be longer for them, and it's going to put a lot more wear and tear of us going 0 to 100 on the highway to get to these locations where we might not actually even get assistance from these departments before the fire, the problem is mitigated. So that's also an issue, because like you said, we have coverage now that's going further out, older trucks.
Yes,
Man, it's crazy. You said engine 3 and 4. I was at station 4 when they got that truck when it was brand new, and it's 15 years already almost.
Yep.
So
13
yeah,
years.
and like I said, the time of getting the equipment and the turnaround, because when was that truck ordered that we still haven't received yet?
It was ordered right in July. The end of July is when we went ahead and ordered it, and it was 410 days on the contract
Yes, sir.
is what we got, and they were still scheduled to get it August, September.
So even if we were to get a truck now, which, like I said, you got 2 more trucks that are coming up on that time, you said it wouldn't be until right now, 25 before those?
Yes, sir. So if we ordered an engine, say we ordered it July 1, we're looking 600 days from that point before we'll get delivery of that truck. So almost 2 years before we even take delivery of it. And the prices, unfortunately, they're not going back down. And people are still buying fire trucks. I talked to our rep the other day, and they sold a year's worth of fire trucks in 1 month. And what it is everybody's trying to beat the price increase. They're trying to get there because they don't see an end in sight right now. And I do want to thank you for pointing out about the volunteers. I don't want to diminish what they do for us.
Right, definitely.
Because they are great, but Councilman Polak is right. Volunteers typically work a daytime job. So when we're calling for help in the day, they may not have anybody to respond. And we're still responsible, and we are still responding out that way. So it just takes us much longer to get to that point.
Chief, for instance, in Rosewood, they do have some people there full-time, right?
No, sir. Rosewood
None at
does
all?
not have full-time. They did hire part-time staff for
Mhm.
daytime, but last I heard, all their daytime staff has left and gone to either other volunteer departments or they've just not wanted to do it.
So they have no capacity to roll a truck until the volunteers get to the station.
Correct.
Roger that.
Yes, sir.
Do you mind going back to slide 14 for us just for a second? We kind of, grazed through this one pretty quickly. If we're looking at future growth over on that western side, you're going to need a new station over on the western side. We're already talking about Station 3. I get that. We've got to look at stuff on the eastern side that's gray that needs coverage as well. We got stuff on the west side that's going to need coverage as well due to exactly what we're talking about right now. Is an additional station over on the west side going to become necessary?
If growth continues to go that way,
Right.
and it fills in like we think, eventually we will need to put a station. Now, I don't think it's 2, 3, 4, 5 years,
Okay.
because I don't think the growth is gonna come that fast. But I do want the council to see, if we continue growing, that is something we need to look at.
How many trucks and how many personnel would you need to go along with that station? How many times there?
Where that's at, I would probably want to put an engine and an aerial device. So you're looking at 2 trucks, 8 people per shift, so 24 personnel.
We need to start planning for that.
Yes, sir, and that's why I brought it. I wasn't looking for initial, it's just a trend that I'm seeing and we're seeing at the fire
And
department.
we need that in addition to Rosewood stations out there?
Unless you're gonna staff full-time personnel and put them at Rosewood
And
Station.
Rosewood stations is what right now? Is it a 2-bay?
No, they have 4 bays, but they're all back in and they wouldn't handle an aerial device.
Okay.
It's not large enough. And you're talking about going and taking them over, because that is not all of Rosewood's area. They have much more further west and south of that. So we wouldn't be taking over Rosewood, kind of like what happened with Pinewood years ago. It isn't that big of a chunk of theirs. So, yes, sir.
Excellent presentation. Very, very good.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Chief.
But anyway, good morning, everyone. Mayor, council, hope everyone's doing well today. Unfortunately, probably going to hear some of the same stuff from me, same concerns. There we go. I could probably do it at this point without the slides, I guess. You hear me okay? Everyone can hear me all
Yep, we
right?
got you, Rick, thanks.
Outstanding. It's going to look familiar for those of you that were here before. I've basically taken the last 2 years and added FY23 to it to impress upon you the concerns I have related to budget, and mine is primarily on equipment. So hopefully I can paint a good picture for you. Stick with me till the end. It's not all dire. The last slide will help hopefully pull us out of the muck and mire that I guess the chief and I'm going to put you in here shortly. But anyway, without further ado, as I did last year, the 3 key things I look at with my budget: funds for operations, materials, supplies. That's usually not a big problem. We barter back and forth during the process, set those line item limits, and we can stay within them. This year's been a little bit of a challenge with the increased costs. You're going to hear that over and over, I'm sure, today. But typically, I can get through the year with those. Funds for personnel, again, positions are authorized, they're funded, not a big concern. But funds for equipment have been and will continue to be. You see the city manager kind of punched me there as I came up. Equipment is our lifeblood, but it's out there for us to do what we need to do. But it continues to be our biggest challenge because of the age. Other problems we've had this year, even equipment that was authorized to be purchased, there are delays in delivery, as the fire chief said. We have a piece of equipment that we ordered in July that's still not here. We're hoping to get it next month. So this slide, basically I'm hoping again this year to illustrate ongoing concerns that we have with the age and reliability of our equipment. It does impact the level and quality of service that we provide to our citizens. It affects morale. It affects the cost it takes to maintain and keep equipment in the field. Morale, my one section within solid waste, the refuse and recycle section, I've had a complete turnover in staff from the supervisor on down. You get new staff in, new operators that come there, they want to demonstrate that they're good at what they do, they want to be here. The easiest way we can support them is to give them equipment that's reliable. It's expected in our field. We use this equipment every day. And once in a while it's going to go down, whether it's new or not. But when it goes down multiple times in a week or multiple times in one day, it starts to affect morale and retention. So for the purpose of this slide, for the presentation, I just looked at Public Works heavy equipment and what I deemed light vehicle light equipment. 149 pieces total. The first slide's going to include all funding sources for the equipment, general fund, utility fund, and stormwater fund. I do break it out. The concern is in the general fund, obviously. But initially, I kept all three in, and I'm looking at FY 21, 22, and 23. And this is where I get familiar to the last 2 years. This is combined with all funding sources. The average age is 12 years, as you can see. It's 12 years. In FY 21, we had 55% of the equipment was over 10 years old. In FY 21, we had almost 40% that was over 15 years old. Fast forward to today, we still have 53% that's over 10 years old and 30% that's over 15 years old. We are investing in the older equipment first. As you can see, the rate of change in the older equipment, when we do get money to replace equipment, it goes towards the older equipment first. So the bar graph reflects where we're spending that money in the right places. Then I pulled out just the general fund. Here, I've taken out the utility fund and stormwater utility fund. The average age of their equipment is less than 10 years. So when I pull that out of the numbers, you're going to see the average age go up. It's 13 years for just the equipment purchased through the general fund. In 21, 67% of that equipment was over 10 years old, and 49, almost 50% was over 15 years old. Still today, we have 59% that's over 10 and 38% that's over 15 years old. Same as last year, the last 2 years, the solid waste division has the oldest and they have the most and the oldest and probably the most used, if I'm being honest, equipment. It's used every day rigorously. It has to go out in the field every day. It's just the processes, the demand that we have for picking up refuse and recycle. And you can see here when I pull them out, the average age goes up to 14.3 years. Almost 3/4 of their equipment in 21 was over 10 years old. 56% was over 15, and almost 40% was over 20. And still today, we have 66% that's over 10, almost half is still over 15, and right at 30% is over 20 years old. And again, here, even within solid waste, you see the trend is in the older equipment. It's a little steeper, the rate of change. So we're investing what funds we do get in the right equipment, I think. This year was a little unique. I'm sure everyone's aware of the leaf issue we've had. Anyone not aware of the leaf issue? Okay, just make sure we're all on the same track. Leaves have been a burden this year. That equipment, I'm going to pull it out. I singled it out, actually. I'll go ahead and pull the slide up. This is the average age of just solid waste equipment, 10, 15, and 20 years old. If you pull out the 27 pieces of equipment that are assigned to the leaf crews, the average age goes up to 20 years. There's 27 pieces of equipment. 10% of that equipment 93% of that equipment is over 10 years old. Almost 80% of it's over 15, and over 50% of it is over 20 years old. Direct correlation between age and reliability. We had reliability issues last year, not to the same extent this year. This year was a deal breaker. I mean, we've really had a hard time keeping that old equipment in the field. Parts, I've had parts on order for over 2 months for some equipment, clutches and stuff like that. And we fix one thing, you put it back out in the field, and it will break down again. It's been a challenge. So we have focused. We've known for years, we've asked for equipment, things get changed, priorities get changed, even through the budget process. And I'll get into some of that here in a second from last year's budget. This is a CIP, and I'll address some of that I just mentioned here within this CIP discussion. This is for the next 5 years. I did keep in what we purchased this year, so we did invest $940,000. Thank you, Tim. He's worked with me the last 2 years to add money. We'd be in a lot worse case if it hadn't been. Years prior, it was really hard to get funding for solid waste equipment. So we invested $940,000 last year. We purchased, this one here was a surprise. This Dump Master, it was a 2016 model Dump Master. We were going to keep it for, a few more years. It caught fire. Total loss. So we had to regroup. We were looking at getting either 2 leaf trucks, 2 rear loaders, so we had to backtrack, reduce those numbers to be able to put money towards a Dump Master. Our commercial refuse service that we have requires 3 Dump Masters. We have 2 in the front line all the time. We have 1 that services the base, and it's our backup. We have to have 3. And when we lost that 1, we were down to 2. We had to jump through hoops. We looked at getting a new one, $335,000 at the time. They're $400,000 this year. But at the time, we couldn't get one. It was going to be a year delay. We were fortunate enough to find a used one, a 2016 model, to replace a 2016 model. It didn't help my age of my equipment, but we were able to get it back in or get that and put it in service. So we have 3. So that was that one actually affected whether we bought 2 leaf machines or 2 rear loaders. We ended up getting 1 leaf machine. That's the one that we're still waiting on it. Ordered it in July. We're hoping to get it in March. We did get a rear loader, which was good. If you look, we paid $200. This year they're $250. The one arm, we knew we were going to start transitioning and replacing our one-arm bandits. Everyone refers to those as our new ones. Well, guess what? They're 10 years old this year. This coming year, they'll be 10 years old. It's the useful life of all this heavy equipment is right around 10 years. After that, you're going to start spending a lot of money to maintain. Your reliability is going to go down, as we see in the leaf, with the leaf equipment. But we did get that in the inventory, and right now, with those one-arm bandits, you come in the garage any given day of the week, you're going to see at least 1 of them on the deadline, maybe 2 in the garage being fixed. Out of those 4, we can usually keep 2, maybe 3 operational all the time. The new one has really helped us out this year. But as you can see, every year for the next 4 years, we need to replace one. By the time we replace that last one, it's going to be 14 years old. We're already having problems with the wiring harnesses. 10 years of service back and forth operations, those wiring harnesses fray. It becomes hard to maintain. Hydraulics, engines, everything. This year, we're asking, this front loader here has been in the CIP for a while. It's 14 years old. Unfortunately, over the last 2 months, it's not deadlined. You see, I've actually got equipment still I'm tracking that's deadlined. Just as the name implies, it's dead. The engine's not repairable. The hydraulics are shot. This one here is actually a 1996. We shouldn't even be considering fixing that. That's beyond repair. But this one here, the hydraulics are shot. We just identified it as a potential backup. That's one of the 3 I have to continue commercial operations for the dumpsters. We think we can keep it running long enough to hopefully get a replacement this year. But if one of my other 2 one of them goes down for an extended period of time, we're not sure how long that one's going to run before it comes back in to be worked on as well. So I did talk to one of my reps, and they have a couple Peterbilts on the field, where last year we were looking at a year to get a replacement. He said if the budget process is looking good, I get the support, and we think we're going to purchase a dump master. He has 2 Peterbilts on the yard. He can reserve one, and we can have it by December, which takes some pressure off me, and I'll sleep a little better at night knowing we're going to have equipment to continue to provide the services we need to provide. So that we're requesting that this year. Then we have a leaf truck, obviously. We're getting 1 new one in March. We're requesting 1 next year, and then for the next year or 2 after that, we're requesting a leaf machine. The one-arm trucks, again, I already mentioned that, 1 a year for the next 4 years. And then this pickup truck is typically what gets cut. We've been asking that for a few years. It is used daily. They use that with the lift gate to go out and deliver and collect cans as we need to deliver them and bring them back for repairs and stuff of that. But it is used regularly. And we tried to spread it out, our costs. You can see it's $1 million, $1.4 million, $1 million, $1.1 million, and that's today's numbers. This year, if we bought the same equipment last year, it would have been about $1 million, $1,050,000, about $350,000 less. Same point that the fire chief made. The equipment is going up almost weekly. In fact, when I was on the phone trying to see about getting the chassis for the dump master, he told me, oh, by the way, the price I gave you a couple weeks ago for the front loader or the one arms is $410 now, and your rear loader is $260, not $250. It's just what we're seeing across the board. Don't mean to be all negative, but just to give you a quick comparison, I'm trying to speed up, I know we're cut for time. This was what I presented last year, the 10-year projection for CIP. You see here the average cost we projected over a 7-year period was about $943,000 a year. This year that number jumps up to $1.35 million, and this is for equipment funded through the general fund for public works alone. This year, solid waste is the bulk of it. $1.4 million is what we're projecting to spend on solid waste equipment. Another $400,000, roughly $1.8 million total for equipment overall in public works. Last year, we spent $1.2 million. Again, it's not all bad, bear with me. The last slide will hopefully bring some smiles back. Considerations we put forward last year, they're up here, plus one more with automatic leaf collection. I'll get into that in just a second. Increasing rates. You took it to heart. We increased rates by $3. That's going to give us another $480,000 in revenue on the solid waste side to put towards loans for solid waste equipment, which equates to about $2.4 million over the next 5 years. That's the light at the end of the tunnel. Those funds need to be reinvested, which is what they're for. We raise rates for solid waste equipment. Those funds need to be turned back around and invested in solid waste equipment. That's what the rates are there for. That's good. And then with the automated leaf collection machines, we've done a deep dive. I have and my staff. I've talked to several public works directors. I just talked to one in Zebulon this week. They have a new automated, he started transitioning in 2008. They just bought the most recent one they bought was this past year, is a PacMac. He ran it and raved. The capabilities are great. It increased his production by 30%. So we're looking at it. We had a demo done here. I wasn't too happy with the one I saw here, but the capability is there. So I'm going to go look at the one in Zebulon. I'm about 90% sure I'm going to start that transition to automated. And what that does for us, right now, if you're not aware, our leaf collection train, I guess you can call it, consists of an engine or a main chassis, an engine on the back of it that operates the vacuum, and then a trailer, a 30, 40-foot trailer behind it. So any one of those three components goes down, we're down. We're down. Plus it takes 3 staff. So if I go to automated, I can reduce the staff down to 1. That saves a full-time and part-time salary, $50,000 at least a year. Over 5 years, that's another $250,000 I can put towards the $2.4 million and invest in equipment for solid waste. It also eliminates the need for the trailers. 3 of those trailers they pull behind them are 31 years old, and 2 of them are 27 years old. They don't make them anymore. We contacted ODB and other manufacturers. They don't make them. We've sent them off in years past to have them sandblasted and repainted just to extend the life of them. Our welder works on them regularly. So going automated will save us money that we can reinvest. So again, I can sleep a little better at night because the numbers aren't as bad as I thought, as long as we reinvest the money back into the equipment. Another consideration last year was reducing the level of service. That's not going to go over well, but it is there as a consideration if we had to raise more money. Reduce the level of service, reduce cost. Eventually we'd like to set up a capital reserve fund for equipment. That's another consideration, and there's always what I threw out there, establishing solid waste as an enterprise fund. All the money it makes brings in through fees and costs, goes right back into solid waste. No one else can touch it. It doesn't subsidize the general fund for everybody else. So again, I hope that's a positive note. That's the extent of my presentation. Are there any questions?
Yeah, Rick, it's a subject I've brought up before. Item 3 there on your white goods and et cetera. We pick up a lot of mattresses, we pick up a lot of furniture, we pick up a lot of household other stuff at no cost to the residents or to the public.
Every week.
I really think we ought to look at on this issue, and I know it costs us money to dispose of those items. I can't speak to what you can, but this is something that I know we are trying to provide services in exchange for the taxes that they pay, but you know, I think we are sort of an exceptional city in terms of the length that we go in terms of picking up debris of that type or those items that I just mentioned.
We're year-round. We provide the service year-round. Some cities, even for leaf and limb collection, it's maybe 4 times a year, but we do it year-round. What you're alluding to with the bulk pickup, a few years ago, before my time, I guess they did charge $5. You called in, you said, I've got 3 pieces of furniture, whatever, to be picked up. You pay your $5, they come get it. The only problem was that it incentivized people not calling you and not putting it in their yard. They would take it somewhere and dump it in the woods, and we still have to go get it. It's just not as convenient. So there's no good deed or idea goes unpunished, I guess. So the way to balance that out there, is it better just to do what we're doing? We changed our processes. Then I was told to encourage people to go ahead and leave it in their front yard and call us. We've even gone further now. They don't even have to call us. Code enforcement literally rides around and sends us a list every week. They load it in on our GIS overlay for us to go pick up. We don't even, they're supposed to call, and a lot do, don't get it the wrong way. A lot of them still do call us, but those that don't still get it picked up. We try to accommodate it because we don't want trash and litter in the city. Whether it's called in or not, we're going to get notified to go get it, whether it's in the woods or somebody's front yard. I don't know what the perfect answer, the solution is to that. I don't know if the little bit of cost of charging a small fee would outweigh increasing the potential for them to dump it somewhere else in someone else's property or in the woods. Because we still have that issue as well. Today we deal with that, cleaning up refuse and trash and construction debris that's dumped on private property, people out in the woods.
Yeah, just to be clear, I'm not talking about any specific neighborhood in the city. I sit right there within a block or two of my house or whatever. And I'm not complaining about my neighborhood. I'm talking about, as a general rule, I see a lot of this type of things sitting out on the street. And I know our code enforcement does their job as well, but when we're picking these things up, it can be a small stove, it can be a double queen size mattress, king mattress, and et cetera, et cetera. And I know you said that if you get the call and there's a charge, but still a lot of times that doesn't happen.
Yeah, we don't charge anything now, and a lot of times we don't get the call. And we do try to pick it up and divert what we can from going to the landfill. Anything metal, steel, we pick it up separately and take it over to the salvage yard. So we don't pay money to dispose of it. We actually get a little bit back.
Right.
Savings is like making money, I guess. So we do try to do it wisely, but we pick up a lot, and it's the same price. It's $32.50 or $31.50 a ton to dispose of it.
I'll just bring that. I don't know how the other council members feel about it.
Rick, what do other cities do about picking up appliances, mattresses, furniture?
It varies. It's, in fact, with the benchmarking studies, we look at what other cities do. We are one of the few that do pick up everything week on a recurring basis, every 2 weeks for leaves and limbs, every week for bulk item pickup. We're one of only a handful that actually do that year-round. Most have gone to 2 days in the fall, 2 days in the spring, 2 weeks or whatever, to try to get it all collected that way. I haven't done too deep of a dive into that to see how it would work here. I don't know how well it would be received. We just increased the rates. So I don't know how, reduce service. I know we need equipment, but, I guess we could justify it, and if it also is justified, we could make any decisions we need to moving forward. I'd have to dive into it a little bit to see.
I think some of the recommendations that Rick is making, that's a very good presentation, especially on the solid waste fund. Most places sort of lean towards creating those enterprise funds. If we're going to continue to do it ourselves, we should create an enterprise fund. We should be tracking our revenues, reconciling our accounts, and then we set up a capital reserve replacement plan for our solid waste. That's the way that's sort of the best management practice right there. So if we're not going to do this, then we need to privatize it, because we need to know if we're running it efficiently. And are we charging more, or are we charging about the right rates for solid waste collection? And what do we define solid waste collection as? Because right now it's kind of broad with what we're doing, so we need to look at those things. And so those 2 points are very, very good. But one thing that's clear to me, looking at a lot of our equipment in all our departments are aging out, but it's particularly clear in the solid waste area. And leaf limb pickup, absolutely. Those things are, and I think it's because, in part, we do more than the average, that's for sure. Not that's a bad thing, it's just we need to recognize where we're at. That's what we want to do, continue to do it, but we need to set it up in a way that we know what we're spending and what it's going to cost to continue to provide this level of service.
And the good point is here, this is above and beyond. This $480,000 we collect this year that we can spend on equipment is above and beyond what we've spent in years past. We spent $943,000 last year on solid waste equipment. this is above and beyond, if we can spend that same amount.
Well, when those
this year.
rates were increased, though, they helped pay for the loan that we took to get the equipment, so
Yes, sir.
you
and,
gotta watch that statement.
Yeah, yes, sir. And $1 million loan at 2.5%, that's what, $225,000 a year, the first year? I mean, so
It'd be half
you're not
of that.
spending right, it would be, yes, sir.
And then we took loan prior to
That's
that,
right.
so, we can do an analysis of this, we'll take a good look at it, but I think the rates that were increased were paying for the loans for the equipment we currently have.
Right.
If our tax rates were increased, no one wants to talk about that, but, the reason why we don't have a capital reserve is because there's no money left when we're done.
And we
Buying
have,
equipment, buying people,
and it's
paying for operations.
paying for
And it's a
staff.
good idea, I'm not saying if we could afford it, but you can't do that. When inflation hits you, unless you increase your tax rate, how do you keep up with inflation? If you do a property reevaluation every 8 years, you're not keeping up with inflation. So these are hard, difficult decisions we're gonna have to make in the coming months.
We can crunch the numbers and see if the rate needs to go up another $1. I don't know. But like I said, this is, at least we're moving in the right direction. I thank you for the rate increase last year, because we'd be sitting in a lot worse situation right now had we not done that. So I guess I'll leave on that note. Any other questions?
Thanks, Rick, very thorough.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Rick.
Good morning, Felicia. The people who make fun happen, play happen.
Everybody, don't forget about your evaluation sheets, too. I know that
Do you have some more?
we're asking a lot. We do have some more, yeah. So don't forget to be doing those. I think there's some in the corner there. I'll get you some more.
All right.
All right, good morning again, everyone. I am here to talk with you about Parks and Recreation, our golf course, and this GEC, the Goldsboro Event Center. So as our city manager said, we do make play happen, but we make a lot of stuff happen, and that's what I'm gonna be touching on.
However many more sessions.
So again, I put this in my slide last year. I'd just like to make sure everyone is aware of what our mission is. So for Goldsboro Parks and Recreation, our mission is to provide a variety of recreation and leisure activities for a diverse population. We maintain a system of parks, indoor facilities, and open spaces for the enjoyment, safety, and well-being of all citizens. This is a slide I presented to you all last year with some changes for this year. So for Parks and Recreation personnel, Parks and Recreation has 36 full-time authorized positions. I was gonna throw out a quiz for you all, but I decided to just go on and tell you. The difference from last year's slide is last year, we had 37 full-time authorized positions. So we have actually eliminated a position for Parks and Recreation. So we have 36 full-time authorized positions and 6 permanent part-time authorized positions. Of the 36 full-time authorized positions, when I did this slide, 6 were vacant. We actually had a full-time person start yesterday, so we only have 5 vacant now. And 2 of the 6 permanent part-time positions are vacant. Had a permanent part-time person start yesterday, so we have 1 vacant now, so we're making a little bit of improvement. But also, just wanted to point out, again, like with last year, 5 of the 6 permanent part-time positions are custodians. So not only are we cleaning our Parks and Recreation facilities, we are cleaning City Hall Addition, Downtown Development, the Hub, GEC, Pro Shop. So it's not just Parks and Recreation facilities that we're cleaning and maintaining. And I always like to point that out to people, because one of the first things people say is, why you have so many staff? This is why. And then again, kind of a repeat slide from last year, talking about our annual operating budget. And again, this is specifically for Parks and Recreation. I just bumped it up. Last year, I had fiscal year 1920, 2021, 2022. I took off 1920 to show, again, the numbers didn't change, 2021, 21, 22, and then I added this year's current fiscal year 22-23 annual operating expenses, which, happy to say, as you see, that we do have an increase, with our annual operating budget. But just as my, co-department heads that presented before me, that's due to increase in material costs. I mean, so it's not just, oh, we had this windfall and here's this extra money. I mean, you're looking at an increase in, specifically for us, like the cost of pool chemicals, the cost of materials. So we kind of had to have that increase. And then one of the things I specifically wanted to point out with you all is for Parks Recreation, our facility and equipment issues. Again, the theme you're seeing today from all the other departments. We have a good thing going on. One of the things I always like to share with people, unlike, fire, police, public works, our public, they have to use their services. They have a choice with us. They don't have to come and participate in our activities. They choose to come and participate in our activities because we do have competition out there. But with that said, we are seeing an increase in our facility usage. That's a good thing. That's a good problem. But when you get that increase in usage, you also get more wear and tear on your equipment. And again, similar with our other departments that have been presenting, one of the things that we've been facing is when we ask for replacement stuff, because I understand if there's a fire, I want a fire truck to come and put out the fire. I don't want us to be telling the public, well, we put a new playground in the park, so that's why you don't have a fire truck. I get it. But we're in that boat too. We've been dealing with deferred equipment replacement, deferred facility maintenance, and it's just kind of coming to a head now. And so with that, the last bullet I had put in there was, capital improvement projects plan. All of our departments, we have a CIP plan that we come up with. The concern is because, and let's be real, we are facing, money issues. I mean, it's not raining money, but because we are facing, money issues, we have to prioritize. So with that, my CIP plan has not been funded for at least the last 8 to 10 years. I'll say, this is our plan, this is when we need to be replacing things, but it's, can you wait another year? Can you push that down 2 or 3 years? Because, again, I get it, we have to prioritize. But with that said, we really do need to look at coming up with a priority schedule for the city overall. I know both the mayor and Octavius, which he stepped out, he's brought up before as far as like a strategic plan. Part of that strategic plan needs to be overall for the city. How are we replacing our equipment overall, where it's not just department specific. That's what we need, I believe, for us as the city of Goldsboro. I have a picture up here specifically of the playground, of a piece of playground equipment, because at several of our parks, which is typically what you'll find with us, we installed playground equipment at several of our parks at the same time. That means we have playground equipment that's over 20 years old at several of our parks. And again, that's where that CIP plan will come into play as far as, let's rotate this equipment out this year, go to another park in a couple of years. But because we put it all in at the same time, it's all starting to fail at the same time. Now, we've been fortunate in the past in that we've been able to acquire some grants to help offset the cost of replacing some of this equipment, but specifically like at H.V. Brown Park. We had to take some equipment out a couple of years ago. We ended up taking out the rest of the actual playground equipment this past year. If you go to H.V. Brown Park, you will see swing bays, meaning like the swing stands with swings. You will not see any type of play structure because it was over 20 years old and it was a hazard. We had to remove it. We had to remove it, but we don't have any money to replace it. So that's one of the things that, that we're dealing with now in Parks and Recreation. I know I had a recent conversation with the other Felicia Williams, and we were talking about the possibility of using, CDBG funding to help put a new playground in H.V. Brown Park, or to help with renovations with some of our other facilities, which I'm gonna get to in a little bit. But again, that's just something I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware as far as the things that we're facing. And one of the facilities I was talking about is T.C. Coley Community Center. I came back before you all a couple of months ago towards the end of last year, and you all gave us the go-ahead to move forward with replacing the roof over the recreation room at TC Coley. Because it's, we all know, we as the city went in and did some renovations. I mentioned it at that meeting then, that there were still some other things that needed to be done. Specifically, when you walk into the lobby area, those restrooms on your left-hand side, when that facility was built, I think those are the restrooms that were still there. I mean, they need to be widened, they need to be made more ADA accessible. When the renovations were done at the facility, in the recreation room itself, we didn't do anything with the ceiling that's in that room or the lighting that's in that room. And those are some potential improvements that could be made using the CDBG funds that, like I said, I had a conversation with Felicia Williams about. Like I said, but those are some things that we're looking at that's potentially coming down the pipe.
Felicia?
Yes, sir.
When we were talking about replacing the roof, council basically authorized that to come from general fund balance, but
Correct.
we are looking to see whether CDBG would help with that, and if we can get CDBG money to pay for that, then the general fund would obviously be not needing to be spent and then be available for other things. So we'll let you know what we come up with here, but both Felicias are working that pretty closely with our HUD rep.
If you're about to touch on this, then just tell me to hold that thought. What's the short-term future of TC Coley as our other structures are currently effectively unusable?
I'm going to bring that
I'll
into
hold
play.
that thought.
Segue.
Yeah.
Segue, perfect segue. Herman Park Center. So as we all know, council made a decision, correct decision, to close the facility last year because of the mold issues and the other things that we had going on. I was actually like cutting eyes at Chief Stimpian when he made a comment about fire stations, replaced them after 40 years because you get to have mold issues. That building's over 100 years old. So because Herman Park Center was closed, the staff that was in Herman Park Center were moved, and my picture didn't show up.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting
Yeah.
admin building up there.
Something happened to my pictures. It's on the slide, but where you see the box, it's supposed to be a picture of the admin building. I don't know what happened to it. But the admin building is the little building that is located beside Herman Park Center and the library. It was originally the admin building. A previous Parks Recreation Director around 2008, 2009, when she came on board, moved the admin staff into Herman Park Center. And I've shared this with several people because it was kind of confusing to our public. People were going to the admin building to rent a room at Herman Park Center. People were going to Herman Park Center to rent a picnic shelter at Berkeley Park. And so, the decision was made, let's put everybody in one building. So all the staff were moved into Herman Park Center. Admin building sat vacant for a while. Then shortly after I and the previous Parks and Recreation Director started, we made another usage of the space. But with Herman Park Center closing, all the staff that's in Herman Park Center has been moved to the admin building. When it was originally in the admin building, there were 5 staff in there. Now that we've had to relocate all of our staff to the admin building, so what was old is new again, it's 9 staff in the building. The building hasn't gotten any bigger. We're on top of each other. So we're making do with that, with, office space for us, making changes. I had a conversation most recently with the city manager about desks and things, and he was like, well, why can't you take your desks out of Herman Park Center and put them in there? Everybody had their own office. If we were to take those desks out of Herman Park Center and put them in the admin building, no one could get into the admin building because the desks would take up the space because it's an open space where people are. So, but with that, the programs that were at Herman Park Center have been relocated to other facilities. That includes TC Coley, W.A. Foster Center, and our other facilities where we're still doing programming. So as far as the short-term idea we have for TC Coley is we're making it back into the recreation center that it was. Now that's with the exception of the gymnasium area because council approved the lease agreement, so we don't have access to the gymnasium area. But the recreation room and the other rooms, we are programming those spaces. Programs that we had at Herman Park Center, they're being held there. Again, just like some of those programs are being held at WA Foster Center. But along with that, in the past, we've held a summer camp at both Herman Park Center and WA Foster Center. This year, we're still looking to have a summer camp at WA Foster Center, and we're actually looking to do a different camp at TC Coley Community Center, one that's kind of near and dear to my heart because I'll go ahead and let the cat out of the bag. We're looking to offer a camp specifically for like 4, 5, and 6-year-olds, where it's like a half-day camp. Because typically our camps start at age 6, 7, but we don't have something for those younger kids that's about to start school. And so we're trying to program TC Coley for a half-day camp. So, like I said, we are trying to fully make use of the TC Coley Community Center with us not having access to Herman Park Center. And that kind of loops back to having a conversation with Felicia about using CDBG funds to help bring the facility more up to speed. Did I answer your question?
You did, thank you.
Golf course and event center personnel. See, I'm not all about Parks and Recreation. I love everybody else too. I bring in other departments. Our Goldsboro Golf Course has 3 full-time authorized positions and 2 permanent part-time authorized positions. Our Goldsboro Event Center, the facility we're in now, has 1 full-time authorized position and 1 permanent part-time position. Of the 4 combined full-time positions, 3 for golf course, 1 for GEC, when I did this presentation, when I put it together, 2 of those full-time positions were vacant. I am again happy to say 1 of those full-time positions started yesterday, so we're making strides, But we do still have another full-time position vacant. Keeping with the theme, I'm going to my Goldsboro Event Center, then I'll be going to the golf course, just letting you know about our facility needs and issues. Again, we're here in the Goldsboro Event Center. Just like with everything else, we need to work on continuously improving our facilities and not do deferred maintenance. Specifically here at the Goldsboro Event Center, we're having plumbing issues. My ladies in the room, I apologize, but when you come in through the front door, you notice you can't use that main restroom. You know, it's closed. We're working on a solution to try to fix it. We do have other, facilities you can use in this building, but that is an issue. We need to come to a resolution with it. And we don't want the resolution to be we have to tear up this floor to put in a new pipeline. We're trying to do something else. But we do have plumbing issues here. Similarly, we have leak issues here. We have, a roof that is starting to leak, and so we have to get that fixed. And just like with everything else, we want to stay up with technology. This facility has been doing an awesome job. Josh Shockley, he's been the event center manager here for almost a year now. He's kind of standing in the background in the dark. But he has done an awesome job with bringing notoriety to this facility. I mean, we have been slam booked out. This facility is bringing in tons and tons of revenue. But just like with Parks and Recreation, and just like with the golf course, when I talk about the golf course, all the money we bring in goes into the general fund. There is no enterprise fund. So there is not a special fund we can dip into to make repairs to the facility. We're dependent on the money from the general fund, which is why I keep going back to, I think it would be beneficial if the city set up a citywide, capital improvements plan to say, this year we're gonna focus on fire, this year we're gonna focus on public works, something like that, so that we can all get what we want in a timely manner.
May I make a comment there if I can? Great job by Josh and the staff here. We do need to look at our rates, what we're charging. I mean, we're booked through the rest of the year already. It's great, but we probably need to take a close look at why. Because this facility is affordable. How affordable should it be when you have these facility-related upkeep issues that we haven't necessarily paid attention to in the past that we need to do to make sure this facility stays in the great shape it should be. But you can't budget for that until you have the income. Now we're starting to generate the income, so we'll take a close look at that in this budget cycle.
Okay. And what you do not see is the backside of this facility. Again, I don't know what happened to that picture because I have my
What are the
little cheat
electric
sheet.
golf carts? We got those.
Oh, I'm gonna touch on that.
Okay.
But Goldsboro Golf Course, again, Goldsboro Golf Course, the Pro Shop hasn't moved here into the Goldsboro Event Center. We have, a section to my right, to your right, my left, in the back where the Pro Shop is for the Goldsboro Golf Course. And like I said, that's what I was supposed to be showing you all the picture, so you'll see where it is. But again, just like with everything else, we need to come up with a plan to replace our equipment in a timely manner. I'm specifically showing like some of the mowers that we have. This is the mowing equipment that we did a 5-year lease on, and then back in 2019, when the 5-year lease was up, we went into a 2-year lease to own of the same equipment. So we now own the equipment, which is great, but the equipment's over 8 years old. And I didn't touch on this before, but because we are Parks Recreation Golf Course, Goldsboro Event Center, we share. We're Parks and Recreation. We know how to play well together. But my Parks Recreation staff, they borrow the sprayer from the golf course to spray our fields. Yes, sir.
I don't want to, I'm going to derail the conversation if I get into finances too much, but we did a lease followed by a lease to own on the same piece of equipment.
Mm-hmm.
So we basically paid double for the piece of equipment?
We didn't pay
No.
double for it. So quick backstory on that. We did a 5-year lease, and the previous 5 years before, we had done a 5-year lease. When it came time to do a new lease or whatever, council at the time made the decision to, let's do a 2-year lease to own because we needed equipment, but they didn't want to commit to 5 years. They didn't want to get new equipment because we were throwing them different options. We could purchase, we could lease another 5 years, different new equipment, because when you do a lease, it's new equipment. And then this was one of the options that came out that council settled on.
Yeah, but the money factors in leases, never mind. Bottom line is we paid a notable premium. There's no way around that. That's just how money works. Okay.
But we own it now. And, since we do own it, like I said, we have staff on hand to help maintain the equipment. But as I was saying also, our equipment, we share our equipment. So golf course equipment is not golf course equipment. Parks Recreation equipment is not Parks Recreation equipment. We don't even have all the equipment that we need for Parks Recreation, so our staff actually borrows equipment from Public Works. So that's why I say, we understand, with the whole money issue and, equipment. My point for the presentation is I just wanted us to all be aware, like with the other departments, we need to have a plan in place and follow the plan when it comes to replacing equipment, making repairs, because if we keep deferring, we're just going to have, I don't want to say a catastrophic situation, but we're going to have a situation like what we're in now where we've had to close Herman Park Center. And that was my presentation. Any questions for me?
I would just like to add, I think there's efficiencies by having all these things under Parks and Recreation and being able to pull that equipment from a Public Works department rather than having to own it separately in individual stovepipes. So I get where you're going, but I appreciate everybody working together on that.
Yeah. Like I said, we did, and I am in no way advocating we need that equipment. I'm just, wanting to point out that we do use that equipment, but we don't use it near as much as Public Works does. So it does work for us to borrow it when we need it. And before I go, I'm gonna come back to Matt. I realized I didn't touch on the golf carts. So we are making strides. We have made strides. Council approved us to move forward with, replacing our golf cart fleet. And we are purchasing that, we are owning that, and just like with the rentals we have here at the GEC, that is a moneymaker. We will make money off those golf carts. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Golf carts will pay for themselves, and we are making money off of them.
But it's not like, that money is going towards General fund.
It is.
Right.
But
Not
that's what I'm saying.
necessarily to the
We're not
golf
keeping it.
course, but.
When I say we're making money, we, the city, that's what I mean by we. It's not we, Parks and Recreation, or we, golf course keeps the money. It goes into the general fund.
Felicia, I'll also throw out one other thing. You know, you coming to us, you and Obi coming to us and asking to be able to reorganize. I really appreciate all the personalities being able to set ego aside, come together and work for the betterment of the department, of the facility, to be able to provide an outstanding experience for folks that choose to use this facility, as evidenced by the fact that it's booked. I just appreciate that sort of thing. So thank you.
Thank y'all.
Ms.
Thank you.
Felicia?
Yes, sir.
Before you take your seat, I had a question in reference to the Patrick Best track. Just for clarity, is that city maintained or school county?
That is school maintained. The Patrick Best track is school property. It is maintained by Wayne County Public Schools.
Okay.
Where I think the confusion has come in, because I was able to kind of do a little deep dive and find some previous council meeting minutes. It's probably been at least 10 years ago. There were lights that were around the walking track.
Yes, ma'am.
And something happened, electrical storm, fried the system, the lights no longer work. And at the time, it was more residents, citizens in the community that were using that track in the evening to walk.
Right.
They had gone before the school board to see if the school board would replace the lights, and school board said, well, you know, we don't have any use for it. So they had come before the city council to see if the city council would agree to replace the lights. I think it's like 10 light poles around the track. And the Parks Recreation Director at the time had, like, you know, gotten with, I think they were Progress Energy, they're now Duke Energy Progress, but he had gotten with them, and the cost for the city to take on putting lights on those poles was negligible, very, very, very minimal. So the city, specifically Parks and Recreation, we are paying the utility bill for those lights around the track. I'll even go so far as to say within the last, I think, 3 years, we had the lights changed to LED lights. So they're brighter, but our small utility bill is even smaller because they're LED. But like I said, but we are paying that utility bill for the lights, and it is, I mean, I can go back and like pull up those meeting minutes and share it with you all, but it was a conversation that was held before council where it was a community need, wanting the lights on the tracks so they could use it at night.
Thank you.
Alicia, I got one quick question. Good presentation, by the way. With the golf carts, I know we're spending, was a $250,000 on those? And then how are we housing those? Are we gonna enclose that area that we're putting them into?
No, we're still gonna be keeping them in the same area that we have them at now,
Right.
and we actually secure them at night, so when we all come during the day, they're just like out for like everyone to see, but what some people don't know is like at the end of the day, they're actually compacted in there and secured off and changed.
I think it might be a good idea to look at trying to enclose that. That's gonna extend the life of those carts with the extreme temperature differentials at night and things like that. It would probably cost us $40,000 or $50,000 to do that, but it would be extend the life of those carts.
And if we can get that out of the general fund, I'll be more than happy to do whatever you ask.
Something to think about.
Definitely, yeah.
Just one more question, Councilman Pollock bringing up the track. So have we formalized that arrangement with the school board?
You talking about as far as just paying for the lights?
Yeah.
10 years ago, yes. Like I said, it's all in like council meeting minutes and, you know, I think it was like an agreement that was drawn up between the lawyers at the time, that council at the time, and the mayor at the time signed it, but yes.
I was just making sure it had been reduced to writing. I didn't want us being in some way viewed as a partner for that facility if someone gets hurt looking for liability.
And that's actually what's in the liability about, like, you know, the city is not taking on the liability. Yeah, yes, sir. Okay. All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Felicia. All right, IT, Scott.
council members. Thank you guys for letting us come talk to you about some of our needs and things coming forward. To kind of give you a general update for IT, we're really tracking to be under our budget expectation for the year right now, and I think we'll be in good shape going into the next one with the operational side of our setup. Staffing's still a need and concern for us, and we've filled all our vacant positions but one. Programmers in the hiring process. I'm hopeful with the group we have now that we'll be able to find someone for that. It's been vacant for a while. Staff pay has been a concern for a while, and it still is for some, especially the higher grade positions like that programmer, for example. That's been one of our challenges with it, has been being able to find someone we could afford to have. The vehicles has also been a concern for a few years. We're doing much better on that, and we have received vehicles in the last couple of years, so we're happy and appreciate that effort from council and manager's office to give us something we can use. We still need some more, and we realized going into that it was going to be a staged effort to get to where we needed to be in the end. It's our current O chart, and I bring that up because of, one, we only have the one vacancy, which we're glad it's just one right now, but all the staff that are on the left-hand side of the screen over there in that row, those 5 bottom ones travel the most for anybody else. Those 5 go out and do our field service. We have system administrator level 2 folks in that top row that also go out. You have around 8 people that regularly go out and do stuff, and then others that we may have to go out as well out of the 13. But you have a lot of traveling around because we support items at all the city facilities, have technology, but it also includes water tanks and lift stations and a lot of things with public utilities that people don't see. And we have technology in a tremendous number of places now compared to what we did 10 years ago. Staffing wise, we need to add some additional folks. This is a much shorter list than it used to be, thankfully, and we're grateful for that as well. But it's a server administrator, a database administrator, and a project manager for an IT specific one. In the past years, we've seen a larger increase in our ticketing, our number of things that we're supporting. And in 2021, we had around 5,600 service tickets that we closed, and that's up at 6,200 for 2022. But it's not up because of things breaking and stuff being bad. We've done a pretty good job keeping things going. It's more the fact of a bigger dependence on IT. There's been a larger, if you look at and talk to other department heads, that's one of the things a little different sometimes about us is we go spend a lot of money, it's for the whole city most of the time. Sometimes it's just public safety, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, but it's also covering a wide variety of people. Most of our things are covering entire departments, not just our individual departments. So it's spread out as far as where it's supporting. But we've got, so like right now, our servers that we manage, we have 94 servers that we manage with the existing folks we have. But that server management is a higher level function. It comes under more me, assistant director, network engineer, people like that managing that as well as our normal jobs. Database administration, we have over 30 programs using different databases that we have to support and manage and help people with. And then from projects, we have right now over 30 different projects related to IT needs around different departments within the city. And that covers nearly every department. So it's a wide range of services that we're giving, and we just need a few more staff to help support that and keep our response time better. Vehicle-wise, we're going to request from 3 more, just SUVs, not the more expensive vehicles that we've got, the more expensive things we needed for field service and for fiber splicing and things like that over the past few years. So we're at a cheaper way of doing it right now to give us people to get from point A to B to do support. We've also cut down on the size of equipment that we buy. It's not the big desktops, it's the smaller form factors, which are easier to carry into smaller vehicles. We still need the larger ones that we have for carrying things like some of this equipment we carry is large. Racks to support the equipment are 7 feet tall, 19-inch wide racks. They're not going to fit in your average vehicle. If we have to do splicing on fiber repairs and things, we have to pull the fiber trailer, which is a very heavy trailer that requires a bigger vehicle to be able to pull. And so we're set for some of those functions right now, which is great, but then we need that more field service vehicles to be able to go out. We regularly are out of vehicles now. People are still taking personal vehicles to do a lot of the work that we're doing because we just don't have enough for all the needs that are going on. And we try to do as much of that remotely as we can. One of the things in our capital needs coming up, we have a CIP that sets up how often we're going to replace the PCs, how often we're going to do our server storage, our network, and all those things. We're a little bunched up on our CIP right now because we delayed our server back-end storage replacements and our PC replacements a couple of years back. And when that got held up, it got them both going in the same year. We delayed one of our purchases on this list, and now we have two at the same time. And we realize we may adjust this a little bit again, but we're trying to get back on track with our planned capital improvements for the city. If you look at this one, the first thing on there though is chiller and boiler replacements. That's for City Hall and City Hall Addition. Those are ones put in, well, the boiler actually is older. It was upfit but not replaced when they did the buildings back in 2005. And the chillers are the ones that were installed in 04, 05 timeframe whenever they did the City Hall Addition. And those are ones that have a life cycle to them, and we've seen a lot of repairs, a lot of challenges with them for a long period of time. And the number up there is an unfortunately low number. I said waiting for new numbers on it, and I got them. So apparently, since we first proposed doing this a couple years back to plan it, realizing it may take a year or two to actually do it. It was a little over $200,000. It was like 208 if I remember right. And then this past year it was it would be closer to 330 or 40, not exact. And so I got the numbers back now, and it's quote for realizing we could go bid it to get real numbers, but the estimates that we got for the boiler and the chiller together is $524,000 now. They said there's a 58% increase since January of 2022 for that size of HVAC equipment. And we have seen that through the years with other stuff, Mayor.
So I have a question, this is more directed to manager, assistant manager. Why is the City Hall chiller and boiler falls under the IT CIP?
Well, I think you're going to hear the assistant city manager talk about that in his presentation a little bit later, how we're looking at reorganizing a little bit under buildings and grounds. But Scott happens to be very good at what he does in overseeing that. He's worked very closely with Rick in the past to make sure these things are looked after. And of course, the previous assistant city manager, Randy, knew these systems well. How old is that system, and what should be the replacement life cycle?
Well, generally you're going to get 15 to 20 years out of that equipment, depending on which one you buy, matters of course. But those were purchase-wise, when you look back at the record, was around 2004. So you're running, by the time you could get them done and get it replaced, you're going to be at your 20 years in the end by doing it. And there were cheaper systems, honestly, and that shows in some of their.
It's a matter of affordability, what we can do with our budget baseline, right? The system is still operating. Occasionally, we have it where it's very cold, we don't get enough heat, very hot, we don't get enough AC, it goes out. But if you're down there in the public safety complex and you've got mold issues in your HVAC system from the old building that we didn't replace when we added the new one to it because there wasn't enough funding for that, it's kind of some of the hard choices you have to make. But I think you're going to hear from Matt here in a little bit. Do you have any additional comments, Matt?
No, I think you're right. Scott's done a very good job. I think it just makes more sense to have, as most places do, buildings and grounds, and underneath the buildings and grounds department, we might need to add support, and that's going to be a transition way we're going to do that, but make it happen. But they're watching the buildings every day, so that's where we need to have it when we start seeing issues before they start becoming major issues. That's we want to get to more of a preventive kind of place, as opposed to, okay, oh my gosh, it's all broke down. Even with this building, we don't have to wait. If we can get things done now, then we try to do them now, as far as wait until they completely break down.
Okay.
He'll talk about some citywide maintenance contracts, right? So you keep things up rather than have them go bad over time.
Okay.
Yeah, and we've been really supportive of that move, honestly. We are happy to have that transition to building and grounds. It was something, like I said, we sort of took it over because it was the first really computer-controlled and managed system that was in the city. And it does have computer controls, and we have to give access to it for the people to do service. We have to, if we're going to change something, we can pull it up on the computer and do adjustments to it from here if we need to. That sort of stuff was new. And so there's some training and things we have to do to make sure everybody understands how that operates. And that's going to be the thing going forward. All the new stuff is going to be that way, and that's where they'll support it. And we'll help them wherever we need to, just like we would any other IT system at that point. The cost increases in that are going to be a challenge because it is a big, and I don't know if the number's going down. One of the big impacts was the SEER ratings and requirements for that changed for this year. It was something put in as a Go Green, I guess you would say, initiatives last year. They changed what you're allowed to sell. So we're having to buy more efficient units, so they're going to be more effective as far as cost savings for you. But they're going to be more expensive because they're new. And maybe that'll drop down into next year. We don't know for sure what that is. But trend has been, like I say, it's about 58% up from last time. So on the more appropriately IT-related items, the network equipment and uninterrupted power supply replacements and the mobile computers for public safety, which covers all your police and fire vehicles. Those are two things that we've got trying to do plan for this coming year. We hope those numbers are a little higher than they will be when we get our final numbers for the budget. But that's the plan right now, would be to do that over and those are numbers that we do over finance and over time. It's usually a 5-year financing program we do for getting those with help of finance on it. And so we do that each time we're having some sort of a big expenditure. The other one are vehicles in there. We can't get the exact pricing for the new year yet on the vehicles, but we're going to have estimates on that, and that's the ones I referenced a short time ago. We may, again, once we look at this, we may move something like network equipment, for example. If we see that we can move it, we will try to do that potentially to the next fiscal year when there's not anything that's under one of our capital needs. But some of the equipment, like the network equipment, we're running into issues of life cycle on it too. They have a set amount of time they go into sale where you can't buy them anymore, and they go into life where you can't get any support or service or anything or parts for them. And that's where some of our equipment is, just because we're a little delayed in doing that network change out. But at the same time, your public safety equipment, all the MDTs in the vehicles, which have a naturally harder life than their standard computers and stuff, they all are out of warranty now too. So you're going to have repairs and things that we just won't be able to do on some, and it'll be expensive repairs when we do. So they're all the same age, so you start seeing attrition get higher in that 6th year on those. So there's considerations to make on that. And the other stuff just covers the 5 years out, listed down where we get back to doing servers and storage again and phone system changes that we're doing this year. So do you have any questions or anything about what I've covered?
Just,
Yes, sir.
this one's a bit down in the weeds. I apologize up front, but as I walked around your office, I've seen older Dell units, I've seen HP units, I've seen HP Slim clients, I've seen Dell Slim clients, I've seen I think I saw a piece of Lenovo hardware, I've seen Panasonic hardware. Maintaining that many images is intensive. If you looked at, are y'all considering, just mainlining any of your platforms, or is that just the nature of the beast with the city?
Well, we standardize on HP right now.
Okay.
Anything that's there that's Dell could be because it was either, we get some equipment sometimes through the police department for seizures they get. We'll have something that comes in that we take because there's no control what they get given.
Mm-hmm.
And so those things may be Dell or some other product. The two things we use are Panasonic and HP right now. Panasonic, when we buy those, we have custom image for those, and we have that image by the manufacturer as part of the cost. They included in the cost that we pay. The HPs, we don't pay any extra for them. We prep an image, and they image all of them before they get to us at no cost to us, additional to the equipment. So that's what the vendor does for us. So there's things like that that help us a lot in that. But having really 2 or 3 models of HP helps a lot in that, what you're talking about, because it is really hard if you split it up among a lot of different things. And That's one with, network equipment, you standardize on one thing, that helps you a lot in your support.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Scott.
Mr. Bobby Kroom, Engineering Department, next.
Freestyle. Sorry.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Right.
Yep. Where's
How
my
many engineers does it say?
point? I never had, right? How about a pointer? Okay, I'll just use a pen. Good
Just
morning.
say slide and they'll move it for you if you haven't.
Well, the pointer is what I was looking for.
Okay.
And despite what I may feel like physically, my body is telling me different, so I'm having harder to see nowadays. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for giving us the time to talk about our different departmental needs. It is interesting to sit back and watch everybody's department and their different issues and how we're trying to tackle them. The engineering department, we're fortunate enough that we don't have the issue of existing vacancies. Rather, we have a problem of our capacity is beyond our workload. We need more positions at this point. And we're trying to think through strategically what that looks like, how it can be efficient in what we're asking for, and hopefully I can underline what that need really is and why we need them. So to back up a little bit, the engineering department fosters a work environment of teamwork, professionalism, accountability, and more importantly to me a lot of times is high expectations. I believe our department work culture has been instrumental in hiring talented employees with minimal vacancy periods. And by that I mean in the last year we have hired 6 vacancies with minimal downtime. So, and I believe our work culture and our work environment has played a lot into getting quality people, talented people that continue to build on our foundation and a focus at becoming a full-service engineering department for the city of Goldsboro. And if you look, you'll notice the blue blocks are what our current positions are, our current field positions are. So as I say that we have 6 vacancies that we filled, you'll see that that's almost 50% of our entire department that we've done in 1 year. And I think the next step in providing the service that we want to provide and the capacity that we want to provide that we're currently tasked with is adding 2 positions. Those 2 positions are, you'll see in the yellow, one is an additional construction inspector and an administrative assistant, which you'll notice up there that the engineering department does not have a dedicated administrative assistant currently, and I don't think we have had it for years. So anytime you add a position, obviously the questions become, what's the need for them and how are we going to pay for it, right? So, and I'll go through the position needs and then I'll highlight what we're looking at from a potential funding source, hopefully. The construction inspector would assist in field work required by the projects that we have inherited, taken on, and have been tasked with recently. Any project we take on, especially for one that involves state and federal funds, requires onerous reporting and paperwork that we currently have limited capacity for. And I know we're short on time, so I'm not going to go through any of the paperwork requirements, but if you've ever been involved in state and federal requirements, state and federal funds, it is a huge task, specifically for a shorthanded department. An example from a funding standpoint for this would be that the city recently received a quote of $225,000, almost $250,000, for one of our projects, our 2-inch galvanized water line project. That $225,000 would cover the administration and inspection for that project, just that one project. So that would be money that would be walking out the door to an engineering firm to cover those responsibilities, those requirements for that project.
That was your $6 million project.
That was a $6 million project, that's correct, the 2-inch galvanized water line project. So with that money, we could obviously fund in-house positions for a couple of years on that one project alone. Additionally, that would have an economic impact, keeping those funds in our community by hiring somebody here, rather than it going to an engineering firm outside of our city. We obviously can't eliminate all of our professional services that we have to go outside to meet, but I do see a great opportunity at strategically managing our workload in-house. The second position, the administrative assistant, again, I would like that for two primary reasons outside the fact that we don't currently have this dedicated position. First, as I mentioned before, the state and federal fund projects that we work on require an intense amount of paperwork, recording, and oversight. This position would simultaneously assist the project manager and construction inspectors with the paperwork side of our equation, leaving them to focus more on the field side. Based on where we can put this position in our department, it would also become a natural backup position to someone that has 45 years of engineering department experience with our city. So obviously they can walk out the door at any point. I hope we still have 3, 4, 5 more years with her. I joke that I will be here as long as she is. However, that's a huge knowledge gap that would walk out the door at any point, and I want to make sure that we're covering our needs from that standpoint. So those are kind of the two positions I'm talking about and hopefully requesting at this point, but I want to kind of highlight why I believe that is a true need for the engineering department. So I took a quick snapshot in time of what we're working on today, right? So these are all projects that we either directly are involved in or indirectly, for instance, through NCDOT. But even with those indirect projects, we still have a heavy hand as far as utility relocates, which calls us to use up our time and efforts throughout the day, which it's a zero-sum game, right? So if we're spending time on other projects, it takes away from something. So I'll just quickly go down some of the highlight projects. If you notice, even though Phase 4, the very first one, our Phase 4 sanitary sewer collection rehab project, the construction on that project is closed out. However, again, getting back to the recording and paperwork side of it, it's just a very difficult process to close out with DWI, and we're still waiting the okay for them on change orders. Skip down to Mount Olive Pickle. Obviously, that's not a city project, but is obviously one that we are heavily involved in from a utility standpoint with Bert and ourselves. The $22 million that you see on that project budget is only the money that came from the General Assembly. That is not the total of that project because they probably total it 4 or 5 times that amount easily. Phase 3, I hate to bring that up, to be quite honest. Phase 3 is a project that we were very high on. We provided an application to the Viable Utility Reserve Funds this past round. $8.5 million project. We need it in our city. However, painfully, we came up 1 point short, I believe, of getting that project approved for a grant. And I will say, so obviously a lot of the pressure that we're seeing right now is that the engineering department is having to go after a lot of grants because of our inability to go for loans at this point currently. Skipping down to our, under the water projects, the second one, which is the lead and copper service line inventory. So a lot of these projects we kind of plan for, we see it, we go after funding for it, and then occasionally the federal government comes down with what we like to call in the business an unfunded mandate. So this is a project that was thrown in our plate that is needed, but it's an inventory project that is going to take significant time and effort and money, and we've got to figure all that out, but it's not one that we, the engineering department, plan for. So it's just, I only bring that up to say this is a project that we are willing to tackle, and we're going to do a great job at it. But again, at what point does our capacity to tackle these projects in an effective and efficient manner become, we can't work with them as well?
If I could just add one thing, that's what Ken Ori was talking about yesterday, and there may be some funding for that, but we'll determine that.
That's right. So it's to be determined. Right now, it's just from an inventory standpoint. We do anticipate there will be construction elements once we get past this point, but hopefully there are funding opportunities through either state or federal funds. But again, that may come as a match, it may come as a grant. We'll just have to wait and see until that determination comes about. A few more projects. Resurfacing. Resurfacing is something we like to tackle every year. Historically, before the last bond, I believe we have committed, give or take, around $500,000 each year to resurfacing. That has slowly put us behind throughout the years. The bond helped us out in catching up a little bit. But with COVID, us not funding the resurfacing project last year, we continue to fall a little bit behind every year as we don't do that. So we will be asking for money for that as it goes through the budget process. That may be reduced or it may be cut out completely. We don't know yet. And then we just list some of the other projects that really planning is kind of the gatekeeper on, but engineering plays a part in it because anytime development happens, whether it's residential, commercial, industry, engineering is still having to go out and inspect our utilities to make sure that we're accepting valid infrastructure. And then any other, the minor projects, Ashland, Alabama Street sidewalk, despite we may not be building that right now, we still have time and a lot of our efforts built into that project from a design standpoint. So whether or not we do it, our time was already built into it. So I wanted to highlight those projects again, just to say, this is the money that we're involved in. If you see down here at the, which looks to be baby puke yellow box down here at the bottom, is we're looking at our hand in over $80 million that the engineering department is working in. That's more than our city annual budget, right? So I want to continue to put us in a position of being efficient and strategically putting people in place that we can continue to go after grants, go after loans, so that we can repair our infrastructure and maybe not rely as much on either the utility funds or our public works who are already depleted as it is from a staffing level. We want to have a force multiplier in that standpoint. And so I highlighted the $225,000 from one project that could potentially fund, that's an ongoing thing. We're going to continue to go after projects. We're going to continue to go after funds. So the more that we keep those in-house, the more it makes it valuable for us to have that staffing level in our department. Alternatively, we haven't gone over it with holistically, but there may be options since we do have the engineering department is a shared services agreement that we could use some of our utility fund money to fund either all or part of those positions. So thank you for your time. I wanted to catch us up a little bit, so I'll breeze through it, but I'll take any questions if needed.
Bobby, I'll just make one note here.
Sure.
Go back to that slide a second. You see down there, there's no monies out to the right side of asphalt resurfacing.
Yes, sir.
And that's something that I hope our council will really consider when it comes to budget time this year. We haven't done any resurfacing for a while.
We finished up the bond, I think it was 2 fiscal years ago at this point, give or take. One thing, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, one item I wanted to tackle this year is to update our pavement condition rating survey. We would typically get it done every 5-7 years from an outside firm because they're a little more involved in how they provide that rating. Staff will update it every year, but it's more of what I would call a windshield update. So I would like to go outside, hire Itchery, or I guess I shouldn't be naming anybody, but any other engineering firm or anybody who's capable of doing that so that we have a very clear and strategic priority list of where we need to be focusing our monies from a resurfacing standpoint.
In the past, for new council members, since we haven't done it in a while, but the engineering department would present us with a priority list and by district, and then the district representatives would again go in and prioritize that list. So it was pretty effective, I think, and it gave every district an opportunity to get new resurfacing.
Yes, sir, that's true. I'll give you my engineering answer, and then I'll kind of give you my political answer. So from an engineering standpoint, we would love to be able to go down that list from a priority standpoint. But we know that there are needs throughout the city, and obviously we recognize the ability of affecting all of our community, right, in the different districts, and not trying to focus in maybe one area, which I think is kind of what has geared that discussion in the past.
Bobby, were you going to bring that back, that study, in this budget cycle or the next budget cycle?
The resurfacing or the pavement condition?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'll talk about that real quick. So Again, trying to find ways to leverage outside money. We are working with our MPO folks, Austin Brinkley and our planning department, to see if we can include that study through our MPO process and only pay a portion of that. It's our 80-20 split, so that we, the city, wouldn't be funding the entire project. So again, it's just a way that we're trying to look at ways of multiplying our money, if you will. So we hope to have that under contract by the end of this fiscal year. We're trying to squeeze it in before the MPO comes back with their next meeting with the TCC, TAC, included in their PWP, and go from there.
So you
We'll see
would
what
need
shakes
an
out.
allocation from fund balance for that, or you have it in the budget someplace?
So the money for, and this is more of a
Our
MPO
match.
planning, yeah. So our match is already budgeted into the planning department's budget, right? So at the beginning of every year, their PWP through the MPO, the city sets aside our match funds. So that money is already there. It's just a matter of us taking advantage of it and making sure that this is a qualifying project.
That's a very good presentation, Bobby. I just wanted to say that I think the takeaway here is the value added of a quality engineering department that we get here. For every $1 million, when you're spending federal funds, about 40% of that is going to go towards grant administration. So you've got Davis-Bacon, you've got Buy American, you've got all these different types of things. So you're spending with a consultant about $400,000 out of a $1 million grant every time. Here, we can put our funds using our department back into the community, back into new water lines when we get grants, or sewer lines when we get grants for those. That's what the value is, getting those grants, administering those ourselves, and it pays for itself in the long run, as long as we continue to get grants. And even the engineering that we're doing, if we're doing it right, is saving us money because of, we're designing ourselves and making sure it's getting done right. So there's a big takeaway that, and I just wanted you to realize just how much of that administrative cost is that we're absorbing internally on all these grants by doing them ourselves. So he's spot on with that thing about wanting to do more, and Bobby have had those discussions, and he can only do so much, his department.
Thanks, Matt. Any other questions or comments? Thank you.
Good morning. I know we're a little bit behind, so I'll try to catch us up and run through my slides quickly. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. Our department would not typically, or hasn't typically presented during this segment, but we have a unique and exciting opportunity that we'd like to share with you. And the first has kind of a quick turnaround decision requirement in terms of commitment. So I'll jump right in. Okay, so as you know, we are a Main Street community, meaning that we follow the Main Street approach to economic development, which is comprehensive, community-led, and asset-focused. Our city department, the Downtown Development Department, and the DGDC nonprofit, Downtown Goldsboro Development Corporation, together make up Goldsboro's Main Street community, which will be celebrating 40 years in 2024. We are very excited about that. We feel we've made a lot of progress following this approach. And we actually hosted the North Carolina Main Street Conference back in 2016. If you were here for that, it was a tremendous success. We set the record for attendance at the Main Street Conference. I feel our location has a large part in that we are a little more centrally located than like New Bern or Little Washington, places like that. So the Main Street Conference, let's get to my next slide. This is the state's largest downtown revitalization conference. It includes learning sessions, tours, downtown exploration, networking, and essentially activities that support excellence in downtown development. The theme, of course, varies every year. This year is Trek on Down to Main Street. That's a nod to the year of the trail. When we hosted, it was Soaring in Main Street, and we actually had a 4-ship flyover, which was really cool. I'd love to be able to recreate that. So the theme varies, but it always involves the exploration of our North Carolina economic drivers and innovative, creative downtown applications that are occurring across the state with the Main Street program. Now, Main Street communities are located all over North Carolina. Over 150 North Carolina communities participate. There are about 80 designated Main Street communities, and again, we've been designated for about 40 years. Like I said, we hosted back in 2016. We had a record attendance of just under 600. Now the conference brings 700 to 800 attendees, which is a direct economic impact of $100,000 to $150,000 to the community over a 3-day period. That includes occupancy tax, which we expect will be between $5,000 and $10,000. Of course, if we have 800 people staying in a room, 2 to 3 nights, that adds up. When we hosted, we had over 100 volunteers that supported the effort, and we really set the standard for customer service and community engagement at our conference. And we've actually been asked to speak to how we organized our volunteer efforts at the conference because it was so successful. So we look forward to having the opportunity to do that again. And of course, the economic impact goes beyond the monetary impact. And what I mean by that is we are able to build relationships and showcase our community to investors, developers, and really just experts in the field. One example is Patrick Riley, who recently completed the View project. That was a $13.9 million private investment in our downtown. He only invests in Main Street communities because he knows that there's buy-in from the local government. He also knows that we have support from the Main Street Network, and we have built that relationship at the Main Street Conference. Okay, so what does it take to put on a Main Street Conference? Of course, we talked about volunteers. We have a great outpour of volunteer support already with our organization. We are fully prepared to call on the relationships that we built during our last volunteer call for support. We have a volunteer information session annually. We usually recruit new volunteers for that, so I don't foresee that being an issue. And then, of course, budget. So we're told to expect to commit about $30,000 towards the conference. There are a good number of expenses that come from the community, but there's also support from Main Street, but we know that our expected expenditure is going to be around $30,000. We've already secured a commitment from the nonprofit at $10,000 and a commitment of $5,000 from Travel and Tourism, so that would bring the investment for the city down to $15,000 and cut that in half. Of course, we will do everything that we can to kind of value engineer the conference and try to bring down our expenditures. We were able to reduce our expenditures last time by about 25% in doing that, soliciting some more sponsors. So we hope to be able to do that again. Of course, this conference is in March of 2024, so we have time to do those things. It would also require meeting spaces, activities, and transportation assistance. That is part of that $30,000 investment, but those are things that we as a community would be responsible for facilitating. And then there are going to be some outlying housekeeping items. A lot of these items would be funded by our MSD, things like replacing banners, which we already have in our budget, painting light poles, cleaning up parking lots, pressure washing surfaces. We would spend the next 6 months just making a list with other departments of what needs to happen to really, paint us in the best light. Okay, that's all I have to say about the Main Street Conference. The application is actually due tomorrow. We were asked just at the beginning of February if we could support this conference. So I took it to Matt and Tim and the mayor, who all shared their support initially for hosting the conference, and we knew we wouldn't be able to bring it to you until today. But I've already been asked where we are on making the decision, so I let them know that we'd make a decision today, hopefully could share with them tomorrow, and we would make the announcement at the Main Street Conference in March of this year. So we have a whole year to plan, but it's exciting.
So, Aaron, you and I have talked about this shortly after you were contacted about us hosting, and I told you I would support it. I also understand that we have a deadline of tomorrow to give Main Street our answer. I've spoken with a number of I've spoken, I think, to all of our council members about this. So I think we need to have a vote here to determine whether or not we are going to support that. before that, let me just say, I would like to make a motion that we support and host the 2024 Main Street Conference. And I'm doing this as a motion. I'm going to ask if there's a second to that and then any discussion.
Second.
I have a second. Is there any discussion?
Mayor, I'll just add that this was something that last time when we hosted, every restaurant in the city and beyond was packed. The hotels were packed. It's a great opportunity to be able to get some Goldsboro swag pieces sold and out and around. It's a good investment that touches the whole city, not just downtown, even though of course it is focusing on downtown. But the amount of money spent around the city is big. So I enthusiastically express my support as well.
I'd like to say another thing. It was great how the city cleaned itself up. We had groups cleaning out on the highways. We had groups
Yep.
really showcasing the city and people actually volunteering. So
I agree with you, Bill, and I made this comment to Aaron before, and I'll make it to the council this time, and to the city manager, assistant manager, and departments. We have to make this city, and you touched on this already, but we have to clean up this city. Not that it's deplorable at this point, but we need to make it a pristine showplace like we did before, because I tell you, even today, 7 years, about 7 years later, I still get people commenting to me. I remember going to your Main Street Conference, how beautiful the city was, and we want those same comments when people leave here next year. I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, so any more comments, any more discussion on this? If not, all in favor of Goldsboro hosting the 24 Main Street Conference, signify by raising your hand. We have no one to oppose, so the motion carries.
Thank you. I
Excellent.
appreciate it.
We'll be budgeting accordingly for the next fiscal year.
Absolutely. And I don't know if you all saw this picture up in the, is Alan still here? No, he's gone. But it is all hands on deck, and I look forward to getting everyone involved. It's a great opportunity. Okay, so briefly, I just want to make a recommendation based on recent requests for downtown event venues. So again, very brief presentation just to give you some food for thought, and then I'll look forward to coming back to a future council meeting if necessary. So these are some pictures of community events that have happened in the last year at the Hub. You've got Taste of Wayne, Greater Goldsboro Road Race, and the Optimist Kids Fun Day, just some examples of how our downtown Hub venue is utilized. Currently, and I had a picture there too, Felicia. Yeah. Anyway, there's supposed to be a pretty picture of the Hub there. So currently, our fee structure is specific to the Hub. The reason being, the Hub is our designated event venue. It was built for that purpose, as well as to be just a public park-like space and an amenity downtown. So our fee structure, which you all voted into place back in 2021, is a tiered structure, and the highest tier is Tier 1, $500. This is for-profit events with any type of compensation. Tier 2 is $400 plus, and I have plus there because if they ask for additional power pedestals, one is included with their rental. We have 6. Then they can pay an additional $25 per power pedestal. So Tier 2 is going to be, with the exception of nonprofits, an event that does not have compensation or admission, admission. So this would be like a wedding or any other type of private use where they're not charging. And then lastly, Tier 3 is $300 and up. That is for our nonprofit organizations, whether they are receiving any type of compensation or not. All of the reservations at the Hub are required to give us a $100 refundable damage deposit and a COI, Certificate of Insurance. To date, we have not had to hold on to that deposit for any reason, but it is nice to have. There are things that could go wrong, or trash could be neglected or not picked up. So we have that commitment, at least from the rental. Okay, so Freedom Field, again, there was a picture, but this is the field directly across from the hub. So essentially, it's a big grass lot that the city has prepped and graded and really prepared for development. So if you ask me, Aaron, what I want to see happen there, I want to see it put out for potential development. But currently, it's a great event space. We do not have any financial requirements for this space, again, because we strongly encourage any renter to utilize the hub and then utilize the field as backup, whether it's parking or let's say, we know the hub doesn't work for everyone. Maybe they have a food truck festival and they need more space than just the power pedestals, or they need to stake a massive tent in the middle of the field, then they would utilize the field. What we don't have is a policy that requires or mandates a renter to also use the hub. So when you utilize the field, technically you only have to pay a $25 fee, which is an application fee, to utilize that space. There's no damage deposit. There is a certificate of insurance that's required, and the special event application, which has that $25 fee. If we look at staff time, and we're only looking at PD, for example, Sergeant Powers is the one that kind of makes sure that all the T's are crossed and I's dotted with these applications. He's probably spending 4 to 6 hours on each application. That's not worth the $25 of his time. And again, there's no damage deposit. So historically, we have not seen a lot of requests to only use the field, but in the last 3 weeks, we've received 2. So that's why I'm bringing this to you today. And my recommendation is that if someone wants to use the field, regardless of the type of event, that they should also utilize the hub. And the reason is, aside from the fee, there's wear and tear on the hub. No matter what, they're going to use the restrooms. They're going to use the trash receptacles. Parks and Rec is going to have to go out and clean and prep the area, and then come back and clean again. So there's going to be utilization of city activity regardless of how they program their event. So my recommendation is that they commit to utilizing both spaces regardless of the type of use, and that we add a $100 fee to the current hub rental. So one example is a carnival or a circus that wants to come in the spring. So they would pay the $500 rental of the hub plus $100 to utilize the field. That would be a $600 investment, which I think is still very reasonable. We would require that refundable damage deposit with all events, regardless of where they're actually going to set up. And that's pretty much it. Do you have any questions?
So I'm looking for council approval of this so we can move forward.
Let me first of all ask, do you feel that a $100 repairable damage fee, a refundable damage fee is a significant amount?
From what I've seen, it's been sufficient because we haven't had to use it. But if, I'm trying to think of, what could be damaged. Typically, if we had to pull that money back, it would be because there was excessive cleanup. Like trash wasn't picked up, things were just left in disarray. But I haven't seen any reason to increase that. It is refundable, however, so if council feels that we need to bump that up just to cover our bases, we can. That might be a question for Felicia. Who's not Felicia? What do you think could potentially be damaged that we would need to replace?
So some of the things that could potentially be damaged would be at the hub, you have the grounds area, and it is like an irrigation system there. It's a really good job of trying to nip that from the beginning as far as letting the renters know. Do not stake down tents. We have an irrigation system, so you need to sandbag it down or weigh down the tents another way. But as far as the damage deposit itself, for our facilities here at the GEC, we also charge a refundable damage deposit, and it's not like a $500 deposit. It's typically in the range of $100 to $200 that the renter gets back.
I don't know what the council feels about it, but I just wanted to ask that question. Seems low to me because it is refundable.
Have we ever had to use the insurance requirements on top of that?
We have not. Knock on wood.
Felicia, you used to have a different rate structure for city residents and non-city residents. Has that been successful, and is that something that we should look at here?
That has been successful for us. You all as city council endorsed us going to a resident rate and a non-resident rate, which it hasn't quite been in place for a full year yet. But we've had some positive responses from it, especially when we have residents coming to rent our facilities and we're telling them, and because you're a city resident, you only pay this amount, because we advertise the full rate and our residents get a discount.
I've seen pretty much, that's the standard, you know, the in-town rate versus an out-of-town rate. And it's really good because, you know, you want to say, hey, there's an added benefit for your citizens, for your tax-paying citizens of a reduced cost. It still should be relative to what our costs are, but it's not going to be, and you want them to take advantage of it first, too. So there's multiple reasons, and it's a good practice.
So we would not reduce, but we would add to if you were a non-resident, correct?
Yes, I would. And we did take that into consideration when we proposed the fee structure, knowing that we may need to make some adjustments. We looked at Greenville. They charge a lot more for their space, but it's a much larger space. And they do have both. I, for one, like to simplify my application process. We already have a tiered fee structure with 3 tiers. And I would say the majority of our renters have been within the community, at least, of Wayne County. Of course, the circus is not from Wayne County, but the bulk of our renters have been. But I would be open to it if you would like to see what that would look like.
Put your fee slide back up there. So you're asking for us to adopt a joint fee for the use of the hub and the Freedom Field, correct?
Right, it's essentially an add-on. So if someone wants to utilize the field, it would be an additional $100.
Okay. Is there a motion to adopt that or some other form of that proposal?
Make a motion to adopt the presented fee schedule.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, if there's no discussion, all in favor of adopting the fee schedule as submitted, please show by raising your hand. Okay, motion's carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, HR, Bernadette.
All right, to my colleagues to the left, you are a tough bunch to follow. And Ms. Laura, I don't know how the best department in city government got last, but we'll just figure that out on the kickball field, okay? Good morning. I am here from the HR department to discuss with you just a couple of items that, if approved as recommended, would impact our budget this year. The first one would be the implementation of a compensation and classification study. Back in 2019, the city contracted with Evergreen Solutions to do a compensation and pay study. And at that time, the cost of that study was $32,500. So that was about 3 years ago. The purpose of the study was to analyze our classification and pay system and make recommendations to improve our competitive position in the labor market. So what they did was they came in and they looked at our job descriptions, our classification system, and our pay, and compared it to, or benchmarked it to, other municipalities or private sector employees to see where we fell in line. So what are some of the best practices when it comes to compensation and pay? The industry says that we should do one every 3 to 5 years, and the most recent one was actually implemented, partially implemented, in 2020. So what happened, Evergreen gave recommendations, but because of the cost of a full implementation, we were not able to implement the whole, all of the recommendations. And also, a good practice is to complete a compensation and pay study if we have experienced labor shortages or attracting good qualified employees over the past couple of years. So if you look at our pie chart, our turnover rate in 2022 was a total of 25.29%. The national average for turnover rate in 2022 was 9.2%. So you can see, just with our voluntary resignations, our turnover rate was 18.03%, which is somewhat high. In 2021, our turnover rate was a little lower. The total turnover rate was 16.86%, where voluntary resignations were 13.35%. The national turnover rate is less than 10%. So
And clarify that is across all businesses,
across all
not
businesses,
just local
all
government.
employers nationwide, yes, sir. So that includes private sector and local, state, and federal employees.
It'd be nice if we can get a benchmark on that from the North Carolina League of Municipalities for Local Governments, and we're going to work on that.
Yep. So what are we recommending? Well, first of all, we as HR staff has already put out an RFP to invite qualified HR consultants to come in and do a proposal. And their proposal is to review and revise our existing compensation and pay plan. They would study salaries, and they would update job descriptions as necessary. Now, thanks to our supervisors and department heads, our job descriptions are in pretty good shape. So I would suggest that, or recommend that we take a very close look at the compensation plan and the salaries. And one other thing that we would like for them to do is to give us one or more pay option schedules. What can we do to enhance our pay plan and pay our employees more?
Ms. Bernadette,
Yes, sir.
would the longevity proposal come up under that category of compensation and pay? The proposed?
It could. We
Okay.
did not put it in the proposal. I am a supporter of longevity, however, I know that it can be expensive. I would prefer definitely to look at salaries across the board and focus on recruitment and retention.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I would say that longevity is definitely, should be a part of every study. It's
Okay.
typically part of every study. It's a piece of the pay plan, whether you have it or not. It's going to be your peers or whether they have it, so they're going to look at the whole coin.
Yeah, and we can definitely add that. Conversations with my peers across the state, I think over the past years, they had gotten rid of longevity, but several municipalities have and are looking back at putting it into place simply because of retention.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
that's something that is very much coming back into the market. One other thing I like, before we get to pay, I like to mention is I really appreciate Councilwoman Matthews' presentation on the homeless yesterday. However, she did state that the city of San Jose would pay their homeless employees $15 an hour. Well, we have about 4 or 5 classification of employees that do not make $15 an hour.
And her recommendation was for $10, I believe.
The slide said, her recommendation for us were $10, but I was just comparing it to
Right.
another. So, I mean, and that $15 an hour includes our solid waste technicians, our park technicians, and even looking at the pay scale for firefighters working a 112-hour week, they make less than $15 an hour.
That's it.
So we got some work to do.
Yeah.
Okay, our second issue that I wanted to bring to your attention is our recognition policy for city employees. Currently, we, in December of each year, we award service awards to employees that have 5 or more years of service. And when we looked at the current policy, for a 5-year employee, they get $10.
What?
For a 20-year employee, they get $50. And for a 40-year employee, they would get $150. And we just thought that was kind of low. This has been in place for as long as I can remember. So our proposal would be to increase the service award, giving a 5-year employee $50, 20-year employee $200, and 30-plus year $300. So we're kind of putting the funds back up front to give the 5, 10, 15-year employees a little bit more money, but anybody over 30 years would get 300 versus the 150 for 40.
And Bernadette, when you price that out, the 30 years as you turn 30, correct? As opposed to 31, 32?
That's correct. They're given the increments of 5 years. So we have already, of course, the total figure on this would change every year because we have a different number of employees being awarded. So for this year, 23, we've already done the calculation. It's going to be exactly $7,000 to implement this proposal for this year. So department heads, if you all want to know what you need to budget in your department, we've already figured that out for you.
Miss Bernadette, before you move to the next slide, do they still give the retirees money towards their retirement party?
Yes, sir, they do.
So could that also be looked at if we're adjusting like this? Could possibly adjust what we give them towards that as well, or do you think that's
The
not
retirement
needed?
award is based on 30 years of service.
Okay.
So you only get that retirement party at 30 years. And I don't remember, is it $300 you all remember for the party? 200, something like that. We can look at it, but I really think that is probably sufficient.
Okay, that's why I just, okay.
Excuse me, when you said $300 party,
They get, I'll let you explain that.
They
Ms.
get
Bennett.
$300 towards a retirement party.
suppose they don't want a retirement party.
Then they would just get their
The check.
typical retirement gift and no money toward. That money is only used for the party.
Thank you,
And don't quote me, I think it's $300. I'm not.
thank you.
We'll budget for that, and we'll see what happens in the budget process.
For the proposal for this here?
Yes.
Okay, so remember that.
Unless council disagrees, or, I mean, I thought it
Remember
was,
that
I thought it was
these-
relatively low for those years of service.
These figures are budgeted in individual departments. So it's not a total budget. It would not affect the line item for the HR department, but for individual departments. Okay, the next one. The transition of our occupational health program. When I first started back in the city in 1991, I'm aging myself now, we had an occupational health nurse that was at that point contracted by Wayne Memorial Hospital. Today, we still have an occupational health nurse, 31 years later, that's contracted by UNC Wayne. And if you recall, UNC Wayne took over the management and administration of Wayne Memorial Hospital a couple of years ago. So what we are proposing is for us to hire our occupational health nurse as the staff of the city of Goldsboro. There have been several organizations countywide that have already done so. Kinston did it last year, and Wayne County is proposing or having conversation to do it this year. So currently, our health nurse works 32 hours a week. She's off one day a week. She does not work here. We have budgeted $99,840 for the occupational health program. So we're paying about $60 an hour. Her salary is $42 an hour. She has not gotten an increase in a couple of years. So the increases that we are paying for her are going strictly for operation expenses to UNC Wayne. What would happen? We would have competitive pricing where we would be able to purchase medications and any other operational products and supplies from immediate care, local pharmacies versus UNC Wayne. The prices are very competitive. Currently, most recent, we've had several increases. In March 1st of 2022, there was an 11% increase from UNC Wayne for us to increase our budget from $42 an hour to $47 an hour. 6 months later, July 1st of 2022, there was another increase in the amount of 13%. The hourly rate went from $47 to $60 an hour. And we've already been advised that we will get a minimum of an additional 5% increase July 1st of this year, which would take our hourly rates to $63. So I think that's a substantial increase over the past 3 years. We would really like and think that in the long run, we could save the city some money by having our own occupational health nurse on staff. What this would do, this would enhance our working relationship if we choose, and we've had conversation with immediate care and Dr. Grant. He would be our medical consultant. He would make sure all of our policies are in place, and this would eliminate the additional $79 an hour consultant fee that we pay to UNC Wayne. Currently, immediate care oversees our workers' comp, is our workers' comp medical provider. We send all of our on-the-job injuries to immediate care. And like I said, I think this would be a long-term savings and cost-effective for the city. Our cons, the one thing that we felt like may be an issue, that if he or she became a city employee, the cost for benefits would be on the city. So we would have to pay for her retirement, 401k, Social Security, and health insurance, which amounts to $29,296. So, as I said it, fiscal year 23, for 32 hours, if you look at our chart here, we have budgeted 99,840 hours. If we continue at 32 hours per week going into fiscal year 24, that budget minimally will increase to $104,000 plus. We would like to bring her on 40 hours a week because on her day off, she gets numerous calls from employees that need triage or recommendations for healthcare issues. So if we brought her on for 40 hours a week as of July 1st, we would have to budget $127,896. That would include her benefits and the $5,000 line item for operational supplies. If we brought her on, if she stayed with UNC 40 hours a week, that cost would be in excess of $131,000. So you can see long-term, well, really short-term, over the next 24 months, we would have a substantial savings by bringing her on as a city employee. Any questions?
Oh, we under current contract with UNC?
Our current contract with UNC is until June 30th of this year.
Okay.
Brandon?
Yes, sir.
And I'm not really pushing back because I like the idea, but once the city hires its own nurse, then the city is a healthcare provider. It's a slightly different category.
Slightly different category. There are some other municipalities in the state doing it.
Right.
I'm most familiar with the city of Burlington, who has a 5-member occupational health department. Nurse practitioner, a nurse, a medical assistant, and 2 office people.
And you feel comfortable that we can maintain the confidentiality of records? You feel comfortable that we can maintain whatever insurance
Yeah, we're doing
alterations
that
that need
now.
to be? Okay.
We're doing that now.
I think one of the things that makes this move potentially prudent for us is I see us going possibly to a self-insured mode, where our wellness benefits and our wellness plan is going to be really instrumental, in having an in-house person that's an employee that's doing it full-time is going to help us there, because if the state plan is going to bid out and change to, who are they going to, Aetna? Is that?
The state plan will go to Aetna in 2025.
It may be at that point in time, it would be very prudent for us to be bidding that out or looking at self-insured possibility there.
Just a little comparison, I did do some benchmarking. The city of Kinston, who recruited their wellness nurse from UNC Wayne last year, is paying their wellness nurse $37.63 an hour. And Wayne County, who still has a contract with UNC Wayne, her salary is at $45 an hour. So we are anticipating that we could decrease the salary because as of July 1st, we'll be paying $63 an hour. We can go back down to about $45 an hour for the $127,000 for a 40-hour week. Any other questions about the transition?
I've got one question. I worry about losing the affiliation with the hospital. Say somebody gets hurt. And do we have a line to refer an employee that is hurt? Let's say he gets a hand injury. And he has to go to the hospital or he has to go to immediate. Do we have a supervising Do we have a
position.
backup or a supervisor?
Well, our nurse is an RN, and she is qualified to triage. If she finds it out of her scope of duties, then she can, of course, refer to our medical or proposed medical consultant, Dr. Grant. However, just like any other citizen, that employee could go to the emergency room for care. So if the emergency is bad enough, we're sending them to the emergency room regardless.
Okay.
Any other question? A couple of key things I did want to bring to your attention, and I'll be real quick, what your HR department is doing. You know, our number one key is safety, and we have a very, very strong safety program. Robin, our safety officer, is out in the field on work sites, making sure compliance and enforcement issues are in place, and he does a very good job doing that. Our vehicle accidents are down. The ones that we have been having most recently are not at fault for our own employees. So they're usually the fault of some other citizen out there on the streets. So we are doing very good with accident vehicles. Our COVID numbers are down. They've been down. I think we had about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So overall, we're not having as much problems with COVID as we have had in the past. One issue that I have talked to department heads about is the uptick in positive drug tests. And that not only includes new employees, but it also includes existing employees. So we've had an average of probably, over the past few weeks, 1 positive drug test a week. And I just think people got relaxed over COVID. They did not think that we would be doing random testing or post-accident testing, but we have been doing that. It seems like the drug of choice is marijuana. So we are sending our nurse and our safety officer back out into the field and do some training on our drug policy and making sure employees are knowledgeable about the ramifications of positive drug testing, especially our CDL drivers, because there's no second chance for those. As Matt said, in the next 18 months, we probably will be going out for bid for health insurance because the state is contracted with Aetna. So Blue Cross will not be the insurance agency of choice for state or local government employees. So that RFP will probably be going out in about 12 months. Employee relations is a continued issue. We have our share of employee problems and employee relation issues. That seems to be my primary job in putting out fires. But we are doing a very good job in mediating at the lowest level possible with the supervisors, department heads, and myself taking care of those issues, and they're not having to get to the grievance committee or city manager for final decision. So I'm very, very proud of our supervisors and department heads and my staff for taking care of those employee relations. And as everyone over here has said, pay is an issue. Recruitment and retention of employees. And I'm a very strong advocate of whatever we need to do to make sure that our employees can get across the board salary increase this year. It may be 1%, it may be 5%, but I think they would appreciate anything that we are able to do. Anything else?
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome, thank you.
Thanks, Bernadette. You competed well with your peers. I should have given you 2 or 3 more slides. So, we are 50 minutes behind schedule for those other 2 presentations, Mayor. I don't know if you want to do a little bit of working lunch, maybe handle the CIP issue with Bert, and then maybe handle strategic planning at a different format or forum. Let Octavius finish up what his portion was. At least he got to talk yesterday. I would prioritize Bert's piece. Octavius has given me a little bit. Yeah, we can probably handle that later. So we could either have Bert, give his CIP and then do a lunch, shorten the lunch break.
I think we do a working lunch. We need to be ready for Colonel McElhaney when she gets here because she's coming from.
So time is 53. If we could take 10 minutes, take a restroom break, grab your lunch, come in here, and then Bert, when you're all ready, will have his 15, 20-minute presentation. We'll be ready at 12:30 for Seymour Johnson.
She's, yeah, we'll do that.
Okay, sir.
She's in charge of that event.